exciting. But the last watch party was just so good and enjoyable, just as a fan, but it was also just good for my soul. And I think good for a lot of your souls as well, for those of you that are returning for the second time, just to connect, to be together, to share in something positive and uplifting. And obviously, this is not the time or space to really talk, I think, that seriously about political issues or about what's happening in our world. But I will just say, I think even small things, like our love of Middle-earth, and our love of Tolkien and Peter Jackson and these films, the love and the fellowship that we experience, and sharing that love, I think is important to be reminded of. So I'm so glad that you guys are all here to enjoy this with me. It definitely seems to be a much smaller crowd than the last time, but no matter, I will give you my all. And I hope we have a lot of fun here. We'll just wait a few more minutes. It's just a few more minutes before 11 a.m. PST. So I will definitely wait just a little bit longer before we kick things off. If you guys do not have a link to the Desolation of Smaug, specifically my cut of the Desolation of Smaug, that is what we're going to be watching together today and reacting to and responding to. So definitely shoot me an email. The email address is down in the description down below, and I will happily share that link with you so that you can watch along with the rest of the group. What's up, Ritual? Howdy, y'all. Ritual, are you from Texas? Is that what you see, howdy? Or is that just you being fun and greeting people with a fun old way? What's up, Frostborn? What's up, Frostborn? Frostborn. I assume that's a Game of Thrones reference. I feel like we had lots of Game of Thrones fans the last time that we did this watch party, which is not surprising at all. Similar genres. What up, Mortis? What up, Mortis? Good to see you as well. Good to see you as well. There is, like I mentioned during our first watch party, there is a pretty significant delay between when I am saying something and when I'm actually getting to read your comments. So if it takes a second for me to respond to your comments, I apologize, but that's just how technology works. Hey, how long is your cut? Just asking to be sure I have the right one. All right, my cut is 2 hours and 8 minutes and 25 seconds. Obviously, that includes the credits, but the length of the file itself should be 2 hours and 8 minutes and 25 seconds. Hello, Natalie. Welcome back. So glad you're able to join us, even though it's 1 p.m. here in Texas. It's awesome. It's awesome. Where do I find the link for the cut? Simply, love it, Ritual from California. For the link for the cut, simply shoot me an email. The email address is in the description down below. And I will send you over that link so that you can watch along with us. Where in, if you don't mind me asking, Ritual, where in California? I lived in California for a number of years. I lived near Anaheim, California. I actually worked at Disneyland for a number of years. But that's a different topic. That's a different topic. Good morning to you as well. Good morning to you. Con! Good stuff. Yeah, we'll just wait a couple more minutes, let a few more people join into the fun, and see if we can't. Yeah, oh, stop talking to me. I don't need to hear me twice. This is great, guys. This is great. To be completely honest, I entered this whole thing just a little bit glum, just a little bit down, for obvious reasons, all the stuff that's happening in this world, and feeling just a little bit insecure to be watching this and sharing in something uplifting. I in no way want to distract from more important issues. But again, I think it's just good to celebrate and rejoice in the things that we can connect over and love together. So anyways, all that to say, just seeing you guys fire off right here, starting to fill my soul with happiness. So thank you for doing that for me, guys. Thank you for doing that. Richard, I sent something to you. Hopefully you got it. Hopefully you got it. Oh. I got my caffeine, once again. Switched over to coffee, because it's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and Diet Coke doesn't come into my life until, 5 o'clock-ish. That's good stuff. Whenever I am consuming any sort of caffeinated beverage, I always think of the fact that Peter Jackson, I can't remember the specific number of cups of tea that you have in a day, but it was in the 20s, I believe. Which is just insane. There's tea running through that man's veins. Yours is 9 seconds longer. Is there much difference? Possibly. 9 seconds longer, it probably doesn't make a huge difference, my friend. It really doesn't. If you want me to send an updated link, by all means, just shoot me that email, and I will send you the updated link. Glad I could make it this morning, says Ritual. Not sure we'll make it the whole way through, but I'll do my best. Also, nice haircut. Thank you for the compliment on the haircut. It was time, my friend. It was time. I was actually out for a run with a friend of mine this morning. Social distance run, of course. We were 6 feet apart the whole time. And he had gotten a haircut, and I was like, it's time to step out of the cave and actually look like a normal human being once again. Actually buzzing. Yes, I too, am buzzing with excitement. Thank you, Just B, for the compliment as well. Up in North Cal, in the foothills, about a couple hours. All right. Oh, Tahoe. Yes, Tahoe's beautiful. I actually went there for our family reunion not too long ago. 9 p.m. in the evening for you, Con. All right. Well, thank you for staying awake for us. I do hope that you have your glass of tea. Nice. Yes, I think mine says 25 seconds, but that's 1 second off. So I think it's the same one. I don't know why it would be off 1 second, but I think it's okay. Good stuff. I was in Cal, Portlandia since 06. All right, Jack. Very cool. Very cool. I love this. I love this. So one of the reasons that we're having it at this time of day is specifically for all those in Europe. So shout out to all of my European friends out there, be you from the UK or elsewhere. I said it specifically this time so that you guys could have more of a normal time to watch a movie. Some of you actually came out at like 3 o'clock in the morning your time for the last one, which you are incredible. But I wanted to thank you by actually hosting this thing at a more reasonable time. We'll be getting going here in the next, let's say 3 minutes. So it's 03 right now, and we'll kick things off at 06. I just want to make sure as many people can show up as possible. I'm going to do my best to stay on top of your comments. I love reading them and responding to them. Greetings from Germany. Excellent. Welcome from Germany. Florian. I had a good friend of mine, Michael is his name. I won't say his last name because it feels weird just calling him out full name. His name is Michael. He stayed with us for a whole year in high school. Fantastic guy. He was from Bonn, Germany. Lovely guy. Let's see here. Jero, love your passion for Lord of the Rings. My friend, the fact that you are here means that you are passionate about Lord of the Rings. So I love your passion for Lord of the Rings as well. The Master, my dedication to this project is inspiring. Look, I was gifted with some beautiful material to work with. I can take very little credit for that. So it's been easy to be passionate about it. So thank you for being passionate enough to come out and to watch it with me. From the north of England, welcome to you who's from the north of England. The Drums, welcome. Is the next stream the same time as the first one? Yes, my plan is to round things out with the Battle of the Five Armies next week, either Thursday night or Friday night. Haven't decided yet. And I'm planning on hosting that in the evening, our time here. So I apologize to all my European friends. But the stream will be back up later, and feel free to watch the commentary at that point. All right, we got 2 more minutes, and we're going to kick things off. What does your tattoo say, if you don't mind me asking? Yes, so this tattoo, it's upside down, there you go. Quick story about the placement of it. The reason I got it placed right there, being the film nerd that I am, is I watched Memento, and it said, "Remember Sammy Jenkins," on Leonard's hand. And I said, that is a great place for a tattoo. I think people get tattoos for lots of reasons. But one of the reasons I wanted to get a tattoo is so that I would remember something that is extremely important. And this word is actually a Greek word taken from the Gospel of Luke. And the actual literal translation is every day or daily. And it's from the passage that talks about daily picking up your cross and following Christ. And I just wanted it right there because I needed that daily reminder that that's what life is all about. So that's what my tattoo says. I've always wanted to get one, though, in Elvish somewhere. I'm not sure yet what I would get. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know. Spent about 3 years in Portland. Yes, I'm actually from the Pacific Northwest Ritual originally. So I've lived in California. I live in Texas now, but I've lived in Washington State. That's actually where I grew up. Thoughts on the Lord of the Rings reunion, The Drums? And that was heartwarming. That was brilliantly heartwarming. It's 06. I told you we'd get started. The reunion was brilliantly heartwarming. It just, seeing the cast's willingness to all show up and to do things as silly as just quoting back scenes, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Actually, almost brought tears to my eyes in a couple of instances, especially when Sean Astin was reading some of his lines about there being good in this world. I wish I wasn't working today. I could watch the full thing. I'm sorry, they call. I wish you were able to stick around the whole time as well. Hey, Bert. Yes, so I don't know if John actually knows about my secret identity of Bert. I think that's what he's alluding to. But that's a story for another time. Well done, John, if that's what you're referring to. Yes, remember Sammy Jenkins. Memento is fantastic. It is fantastic. Tim Woods, I think I asked which movie took the most elbow grease, and you said that you think it was The Battle of the Five Armies. Was An Unexpected Journey the one that took the least? Yeah, An Unexpected Journey, Tim, was the one that probably took the least amount of work. Though it was the one that I actually found myself coming back to and probably tinkering with the most. Part of that came down to the fact that the first cut that I did is I just cut down on Radagast. And the next one I almost removed all of him and all of the White Council. So little things like that definitely were trickier. Yes, when Billy Boyd sang at the reunion, that was amazing. That was amazing. All right, guys, I have gone beyond my promise to start at 06. So I'm going to count down from, yes, I love Roma by Cuarón. Oh, so good. So good. One of my favorite films that year. Don't worry. I got you. Jero. I know you're saying Roma. All right, I'm going to count down from 10, and then on 10, we're going to hit play. Again, the cut that I've got in front of me right here is the one that is 2 hours and 8 minutes. Oh, we got a couple more emails. Let me quick send those real quick, and then I will count down from 10. Actually, I'll start now. So we're going to count down from 10, and on 0, we're going to hit play. All right, on 0, we're going to hit play. All right, here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, on 0, 2, 1, 0. And we are off to the races. I love this question, Ty Gamer. Do you remember the first time you watched The Lord of the Rings? If so, what was some of your reactions or emotions? Yes, I absolutely remember. I was 14 at the time, and it was a game changer. I mean, I was already in love with film and in love with filmmaking, but it just further solidified my desire to be a part of that, and to make films, to write films, and to direct films. It was terrifying in the best possible way. I was still young enough for things like the ring wraiths, and that moment with Bilbo reaching for the ring and Frodo just scared my socks off in the best possible way. It was a thrill ride from start to finish. And it was also so amazing to see something like Lord of the Rings, which is so iconic, handled in such a unique way. Like, I could see Peter Jackson in the best possible way in every frame of that film, just his unique style. Speaking of Peter Jackson, there's the man right there, obviously, a kind of reprise of his carrot role from Fellowship of the Ring. As he pointed out in behind the scenes, technically, the character that walked by and bit that carrot would probably be the grandfather of the character who's eating the carrot in the Fellowship of the Ring. But nonetheless. So this was a pickup, obviously, because they went from 2 films to 3 films whilst in the production, so they needed a new beginning to the Desolation of Smaug, and this is where they chose to kick things off. Interesting. Lady Vengeance says that there's a huge plot hole in Memento. We should talk about that at some point. I love the fact that they were able to recreate the literal... I love this lady's laugh. Brilliant. Wonderful extra. And there's Peter Jackson's daughter, by the way, in her little cameo. She's been in every single one of the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films, which is just fun. Did you read the Lord of the Rings books before you watched the movies or after? This is very embarrassing, Natalie. I've grown as a person quite a bit. I had only read The Fellowship of the Ring and half of The Two Towers before watching the movies, and I just couldn't finish them. And for me, it was actually really helpful to watch the movies then, because I found then the backbone. There was a leanness to the movies as compared to the books. I found the through line, the story, so to speak. And then it was like going back with the books and getting like the ultimate extended edition. And I was able to love them all the more because of that. So, did you go to film school? Jero asks. Yes, I did go to film school. I went to a place called Biola University in Southern California. And actually I'm currently getting my master's in screenwriting as we speak. as well as teaching film at a university here in Texas. I really enjoyed this scene. So this is actually one of the first edits that you will see in this scene. One of the things that they really hit even harder originally in the theatrical cut is how Thorin is sure, so positive that Thrain, his father, is still alive. And since in my theatrical cut, this will change in my extended cut, but since in my theatrical cut, I am not going to ever have you guys meet Thrain, I'm like, we don't need to hit that so hard over the head. Let's just play that a little bit lighter and move right along. We don't need to have Thorin so positive, so certain that his father is alive, because we're not going to meet him in this movie. So, and also just, let's clip through this scene a bit quicker. Of all of the cold opens from all of the films, this is probably my least favorite. It's not saying it's bad. It's just not as exciting as obviously the Balrog fight. It's not as epic as the opening of Unexpected Journey or of Fellowship, and not as unexpected as the opening of Return of the King. And Smaug torching Lake Town and the Battle of Five Armies is fantastic. Where would I have cut the narrative if you had made this 2 films? So the original place that they were going to end this 2-film series, and the first film of the 2-film series, was after the barrel sequence. And I think I would have done something similar. I probably would have had a similar beat on the rocks after they have arrived, after the barrel sequence there. A similar kind of bonding moment between Thorin and Bilbo, which was obviously transplanted and put at the end of An Unexpected Journey. But I thought that would have been a nice place to end that. A lot of story to get in, though. A lot of story to get in. Yes, the waitress is PJ's daughter. Yes, it is. I'm glad that the timing is convenient for you. Good stuff, good stuff. I love the fact that this extra here with the white eye, he has a literal missing eye in real life. Apparently he's a very sweet guy, but he just has this rough and tumble look because of this missing eye, and he says no qualms in using that to get parts like this one. I'll try not to crunch ice or drink too much. I love this. I love this cut, which is why we're going to need a burglar. I think this is a really smart thing that the filmmakers did, which is really focus in on why do they need Bilbo? What is his purpose in this quest? In my edit, the Smaug, take like down the S and that. Yes, so that's cool, Con, that you have that at the end of yours. Yeah, I think that would have been an interesting thing to do, to have timestamp. Yes, let's give the timestamp real quick. We are at 5:28. 5:29, 5:30, etc. So, like I mentioned during my first watch party, I went to New Zealand back in 2013, and one of the places that I found, which was just wonderful, were the Remarkables down in Queenstown. And this is where a lot of the epic mountainscapes in Lord of the Rings were filmed. I'm not actually sure if these specific mountainscapes were the Remarkables. I would dare to bet that they are. And when I was down in Queenstown, it was just this beautiful mountainscape that I was seeing from a distance, seeing from afar, that I kept on saying, I should just climb that. I should just climb that mountainscape and just do it. So on my last day in New Zealand, I'd been there for 2 weeks. On my last day in New Zealand, I decided to do it. I decided to ascend the Remarkables, to climb the Misty Mountains, so to speak. And I started to do so. But I couldn't find a path anywhere. So I just started to hike up. You can see my car down here in the bottom corner, a tiny little thing in the top right corner of the frame. That's my car down there. I just started to make my way up the hill. Literally, just hoofing it, off-roading it. What I didn't realize, though, is that right beneath the grass, right at a view, was all the Matagauri, which is this native New Zealand thorn bush. And these things are nasty. They would poke you and break off in your skin and give you these little nasty splinters. And it was a rough climb, but it was so worth it because I got up there right at sunrise, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it was quintessential New Zealand, and I felt like I was right in the middle of the Lord of the Rings. So that was me climbing some of these beautiful mountains there in New Zealand. Thank you for dropping the timestamp. Hallie, welcome back. Welcome back. Sorry to skip over your comment there, Con. In my edit, I moved Smaug's attack to Lake Town to the end of the Desolation because I felt like after cutting the Forges fight from the film, it was missing a climax. It absolutely is missing a climax. 100%. Could not agree more. And we'll talk about that when we get there. I went to Paradise as well, which is the kind of the location that they're running through here, right here. This is also where Boromir died at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. And I mentioned this in my Unexpected Journey commentary, but Paradise is as gorgeous as the name suggests. It's just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful place. This is actually not specifically where they shot Beorn's cottage, but nearby, and it's idyllic. Gosh, it's idyllic. And I went there during their summer, which is actually in our winter months here in the States. I went there in January, and it was just this kind of weather the whole time. I always go back and forth on whether or not I think having them enter the way that they do into Beorn's house is the best way to use the narrative. Again, I don't care at all whether or not it's like the book, but I do think there would have been something interesting about using what they had in the book, which was entering at night, and there being kind of this mysterious sort of ambiance. But there is something exciting and action-packed about the bear chase, so I understand that. One of these days, Ritual is going to have to make it to New Zealand. Yes, you will absolutely have to do so. This is from Jero. What is your opinion of the supposedly Amazon Lord of the Rings series? Do you think it could be good without Jackson's influence? Yes, 100%. I'm very excited I'm sorry, I'm just reading some of the other comments. But I'm very excited for the Amazon series. I don't think Jackson has a monopoly on making Middle-earth good. I think that he has laid a pretty good foundation, and because it's been pretty well received, I think they would be foolish to not build off it stylistically in some way. And even the fact that they've hired J.A. Bayona to direct the pilot episodes, who has a somewhat similar style to Peter Jackson, tells me that they're kind of building off of what Peter Jackson laid for them. Good stuff. AI Vlogs thinks that the orcs are a bit overused. Yeah, I think they are too. Which is why I cut them down a little bit in this cut. Where can you watch this fan edit? You can watch this fan edit by emailing me. Link down in the description below, and I will send you over the edit of them. For me, when I was watching Desolation for the first time, this was the scene where I realized, aha, this film was continuing to progress the technology. Not in that I think this is flawless, completely photoreal CG, but it's progressing the technology in the sense that Jackson very rarely in the first film did completely CG environments where everything in the frame, from the characters to the trees to the creatures, is all CG. And he did in this one. So I personally am not as big of a fan of this look, but I needed this scene in here, so it stayed in. Good stuff. I did happily though cut Azog's journey to Dol Guldur. Yes, Tim Wood's Dol Guldur. Because I didn't want to reveal at all in my theatrical cuts that Sauron was behind things, not overtly anyways. And B, we just didn't need that. We didn't need all the explanation. We saw that Bolg was taken over for Azog. He was getting the baton, so to speak, and Azog was off to do something else. And we'll find out what that will be in film 3. That's all that we needed. Azog the Defiler equals a great white shark. Yeah, I mean, he's got that look to him, and he certainly is as merciless, to be sure. So there was the cut right there. And I loved moments like that where I was actually able to use some of the sound design that was already occurring and kind of morph it just a little bit to make it sound like it was coming from something else. So the kind of sound design that you heard there was actually an orc. But if it was pitched down and quieted down just a little bit, it sounded like it was coming from the ring, which I love. Yes, I realize some of you think that, what's up, Tim? I think some of you have watched the behind the scenes where I talked about putting back in the extended edition introduction of Beorn. As you're watching this cut now, I have not done that. I actually went back on myself once again, deciding to save that scene for the extended edition. I just wanted to continue to move the plot along quicker in my theatrical cut, and getting straight into this next scene was the way to do that. It's a sweet little scene, one that I have trimmed down even for my extended edition, but it just didn't feel necessary for the propulsive narrative that I wanted to tell here. Time code we're at right now is 12:36, 12:37, 12:38. I have begun alternate movies. We are at 12:45, 12:46. Again, the whole tone of this scene is one of those examples where I think that the filmmakers did the best that they could. This film being the second film couldn't necessarily start out with the lightness that the scene had from the book. And I think it was tonally the right decision to keep things focused on this growing evil, to keep things focused on Azog, versus have dogs dancing around and serving biscuits and tea. As much as I love that from the book, it just felt not like the right move for this specific movie. Trying to go back. Interesting. Con, you moved it to the beginning of... That's curious. I like that. Yes, I love having my massive mug in this scene. I feel like I can be one of the dwarves around a Baron's table. It's funny. Sorry if you've never noticed this and if it spoils anything. Although I think the CG is fantastic. But they replaced Beorn's hair in the scene with CG hair because the mohawk was just a little bit too intense. They realized only after the fact that the look they chose was just a little bit too big, too large. And so they actually just toned it down by giving him CG hair. So actually in the next scene, you will see the real original hairstyle because they didn't tone it down in CG, and kind of compare and contrast the two, which is funny. Yes, it's a humongous cup. My wife got it for me, which I just love. It's fun. Great voice from the actor playing Beorn. I wanted to reinsert some of this scene because A, the location is just beautiful, quintessential Lord of the Rings. I wanted more Beorn, and it just felt like a nice way to get a bit more of him in the film without slowing things down too much. Do you think, this is from Felix, do you think Beorn would have been included if it had been 2 movies? Oh man, a really abridged version probably. I think they would have had to cut so much more if it had been 2 movies and not be more than 3 hours and 30 minutes per film, if not more. I think they should have cut the White Council if they were going to go for just 2 movies, and cut almost all of Gandalf's mission to Dol Guldur if they wanted to be responsible with the narrative that they were telling. Yes, the eyebrows, Tim Woods, that Beorn's got going are intense. Yeah, it's funny, talking about the extreme looks of some of the characters, Tim. Almost all of the characters, we talked about this during the Unexpected Journey watch party, almost all the characters, a week or 2 into shooting, had kind of a revamp, a redesign. They just realized that it was a little too extreme. And I don't think it was one of those situations where that's how Peter Jackson wanted to do it. There was just so little time for him to really let things marinate and percolate the way that they should in pre-production. So he kind of had to make some of those decisions on the fly. And I'm glad that he had the guts to do so, because it would have been easier just to we've already shot stuff, let's just keep going. Yes, I am very excited for Lord of the Rings Amazon series. But also scared, yes. I completely agree. Alternate movies. I think in any instance where a new studio or a new group of filmmakers is taking on a beloved property, there are so many opportunities to go awry. This is another little adjustment that I made right here coming up. So there's a voiceover from Gladriel, where she's talking about the fact that he has to beware of the necromancer. He is not what he seems, and ultimately we don't ever meet the necromancer. So I needed to cut that. So I just took some sound design from earlier in the scene, plus some music, which was perfectly provided to me on the soundtrack. Put them together, Bob's your uncle. It all worked out, which is always one of my favorite things to do, getting the mixing correct. My brother is a professional sound mixer, and he's taught me a trick or two. Yes, the actor who played Feely, Khan, had to be replaced. I think it was 2 weeks into shooting, something like that. So we talked about that the last time. And yes, you can see him in the Dwarf boot camp. Yes, yep, yeah. So he was replaced. The actor who was originally playing Feely, Khan, was replaced by Dina Gorman. What do you think the biggest mistakes they could have potentially made? Oh gosh, that's a huge conversation. I'll talk about the big mistakes they could potentially make on the Amazon series Robot Devil in just a second. I love the fact that this scene has what I call bad composite sky, where you can see it's a sunny day, but it has an overcast look above them. Because ultimately, if the sunlight was coming through those clouds, it would be much more diffused than it is on their faces. But because later when they were shooting pickups, it was actually raining, they had to digitally add these clouds to the principal photography shoot that was shot out on location. The funny thing is, living in Texas here, where massive storms blow in and blow out very quickly, we have all the time bad composite skies where it's completely overcast overhead, but the sun's just low enough where you're getting hard light. And so I've accepted this look to be completely realistic. See, that's real rain right there from the pickups, which is funny. This movie is my least favorite of your cuts just because I'm not there for most of the time. Yes, Gandalf, I apologize, Gandalf, that I cut you. Gandalf, hang on though, man. Hang on, my friend, because in the extended edition, not only is your trip to Dol Guldur back, your trip to the High Fells is back, and all of your interactions, or most of your interaction with Thrain is back. So you just hang on there, Gandalf the Grey. A necromancer who is what he seems would still be scary and dangerous. It's true. It's true. Necromancers, even if this necromancer wasn't Sauron, a necromancer would still be scary. You are so true, Florian. You are so true. That's a promise. That's a narrative promise. So if a character says something, don't do this, whatever you do, don't do that, make sure you do that, that's a promise that that thing will happen. That's a narrative promise. That's how it works. So the cut that you guys are watching right now does not have any of my updated color grade on it. The updated color grade will be online in the next month or so. But one of the scenes that I pumped in just a little bit more color was into this sequence here in Mirkwood Forest, which was fun to do. Yes, Lady Vengeance, Gandalf the Grey is watching with us, which is fantastic. Yeah, alternate. I'm glad that the Amazon series is a prequel to Peter Jackson's series as well. I don't think they've officially announced that they take place in the same movie universe, so to speak, but they're going to be taking place so far apart. I see no reason why they should come out and say one way or the other. Just let it be that for those that really love this film series. Let it be connected. So one of the changes I made here for my theatrical cut was I had to put back in the sequence right here, the bridge sequence. It just had to go back in. I really wanted to linger in Mirkwood Forest a bit more. I wanted to experience the kind of just intoxicating effect with the dwarves in a bit more of an empathetic way. And putting this whole sequence back in, or almost all the sequence back in, was one that I just felt like would really help with that. Not only is it just cool and creative, it allows us to really be in this interesting space for an amount of time that allows it to be that much more affecting. It's funny, I'm almost 99% sure that Martin Freeman's hair, just in those shots that we were just seeing, is in fact digital. I don't know why it is digital. Maybe the key behind him was really hard to pull. So it's back to a wig right here. But the previous shots, it was digital hair, which is funny. I love that cut. That was on the foot. I really love how creative you had to get with some of your audio edits. Yeah, the audio editing was fun. Mirkwood or Lothlorien. If we're just talking purely the films, I'm probably going to have to still go with Lothlorien. There was something so ethereal and dangerous about that place. Gosh, when Galadriel went full on power Galadriel in Fellowship of the Ring, scared the bejesus out of me in the best possible way. But I really have come to like Mirkwood a lot more after re-adding this sequence in. I love this cut coming up here too. Stay where you are. Oh, so good, so good. Yes, it's good to feel uncomfortable in these scenes. This cut right there. Oh, it's so good. You'll note, too, that I didn't end up putting back in the white stag into my theatrical cut. You will, in fact, be seeing him in my extended cut. Part of that came from the fact that it felt just a little more, I think, confusing to a casual viewer especially than it needed to be. And part of it came from the fact that we had this kind of really terse moment with Thorin saying, "We make our own luck." And that just didn't seem to fit into the character relationship that we had been seeing established between Bilbo and Thorin. So I left it out, but it is back in, at least part of it is back in for my extended cut. Mask asks, did removing Blade from White Council tempt you to alter anything else? So I'm assuming that Mask has seen the fact that I actually digitally removed the blade that was on the table in the White Council in An Unexpected Journey for my extended cuts. And it was some basic Photoshop. It wasn't anything too complicated. And that's really the only reason why I wouldn't do any other removals, just because it was a pretty simple VFX removal for me to do. And other things become a lot more complicated. 3D mapping and crazy paintwork. Yes, Natalie, I love how disorientating these scenes are as well. It really does work. What do you think of Gravity VFX or this movie? So Gravity, I think, is amazing. I think Gravity is just... Alfonso Cuarón's film Gravity is just amazing visual effects. Groundbreaking stuff for sure. Yeah, I think it's the fact that it was groundbreaking, I think, is what led to it winning. Are my extended cuts out? They are... The first film has been completed and has been released for my patrons on Patreon. And the general public, like you guys, will be able to see it sometimes towards the end of the summer. And I'm really excited to share those with you guys. Can you explain why it didn't fit in with the relationship of Thorin and Bilbo? I don't yet understand. Okay, so it's a subtle thing. The moment that Florian is asking about is after the bridge sequence in the extended cut. Thorin sees this white stag, and he raises his bow and arrow, and he wants to shoot the white stag, and before he does, Bilbo's like, "Don't do that," and then he tries, and he misses, and the stag runs off, and Bilbo says, "You shouldn't have done that. It's bad luck." And Thorin very tersely says, "I don't believe in luck. We make our own luck." And the reason why, for me anyways, it didn't fit in with the relationship that had been kind of progressing with Bilbo and Thorin is we had this really strong, very strong bonding moment between those two characters at the end of An Unexpected Journey. And that's the last time that the two of them have really had a moment together, just the two of them. And that was the next time that they were having a one-on-one moment. And it was very taut and tense and terse, all the T words. And it just didn't feel quite right for again, what I thought their journey was as a couple of characters. Yeah, I got you, Florian. Thank you so much. All right, see you, Ritual. Thanks for stopping by. Natalie, absolutely show your little sister these cuts. These are the cuts to watch. So all the rest of the Mirkwood sequence, I've pumped up the saturation just a little bit. On this specific shot, I've dropped it just a skosh and took out some of the green to kind of a green tint on this specific shot. And it looks beautiful in the new color grade. Again, you're not watching the new color grade right now. But in the color grade that I finished, it does really look very nice. Like a skin tone right here in this original color grade is not my favorite. It's kind of this sickly color, and it's just kind of confusing to me. I think some of the specific color grade choices they made, this is just me hypothesizing, but I think some of the specific color grade choices that they made were done because they were trying to counteract the crispness of the 48 frames per second look. So they made it look a little bit grungier, a little bit dirtier, a little grosser, to counteract the perfection and the crispness of the 48 frames per second. So now that it's back to 24 frames per second, I feel completely justified in kind of prettying up the color grade just a little bit. How did Gollum first lose the ring? I'm assuming that, Carter, you're referring to in An Unexpected Journey. It just slipped out of his pocket when he was busy beating an orc to death with a rock. Favorite theme of the saga? Jero, that's a fantastic question. Oh, man. I think I said last time that my favorite theme from the Hobbit films is Feast of Starlight, Tauriel and Keely's theme. And I think my favorite theme from the Lord of the Rings, I mean, honestly, it's a cop-out, but it's so good. It's the Hobbit theme. I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. I love some of the music for the Eagles. I love the sequence in the Two Towers when Arwen's kind of having the flash forward and recognizing what her life will be if she stays. And I love that music. It's gorgeous stuff. Gorgeous stuff. Timestamp for Thomas Valentine. Our timestamp right now is 2806, 2807, 2808. So I actually, again, kind of going back to the color grid that you'll be seeing soon at some point, one of the places that I really bumped up the saturation and the color difference is this whole ring world that's coming up here in a moment. It's just, for me, a little bit hard to see in this original color grid that you're seeing right now, so I wanted to provide just a little more separation in the color. A little more separation in the color. Yes, Peter Jackson is an arachnophobe. It is true, which is why watching these sequences is so funny. All right, Natalie. See you later. See you later. Well, I'm glad that you don't think it's a cop-out, Jero. Glad you don't think it's a cop-out. So this specific sequence in Mirkwood actually reminds me of one of the highlights of my life, and I do apologize that I'm about to digress into some just nerdy talk right now for a second. If there are any changes that are coming up here, I'll definitely pause my story and get back to the changes that I made. But one morning, this is back in 2013, to put it in context, the Desolation of Smaug was coming out Christmas of 2013. I think this was probably like July of 2013. I woke up and found on Facebook that Peter Jackson was going to be having a live Facebook event where he was going to be answering questions from fans, talking about the upcoming release of the Desolation of Smaug. And the reason I'm mentioning this now is they talked about a bunch of the stuff specifically in Mirkwood, and I saw that they were taking fan questions. So I was like, why not? I'll take 2 seconds. Yes, these spiders, Hallie, do remind me of the ones in Harry Potter as well. I wonder where J.K. Rowling got the idea of giant spiders. And so I recorded a question, and I sent it off to Peter Jackson. Thought nothing of it. Sting. Love it. Martin Freeman. Brilliant. Thought nothing of it. Sent it off to him and kind of just forgot about it. And a few weeks later, the live event was occurring, and they were playing back our questions and answering questions. And so Peter Jackson and Jed Brophy, Jabez Olsen, the editor, were sitting around answering fan questions. And whose face should appear on this but yours truly? I told you this is a nerdy story. And I have a recording of me in the background just screaming my head off when this came on screen for the first time. It's hilarious. I just couldn't believe it, that's Peter Jackson's face looking at my face. And this is him right here, just listening happily to my question, which is just amazing. And I couldn't believe that this was happening. And he answered my question, and it was my 15 minutes of fame. There is more to this story that connects specifically to the Battle of the Five Armies. So the story is to be continued. I love some of the gags in this sequence, like with the legs popping off and stuff like that. It's so hilariously Peter Jackson, but it also works. It also works and feels just grounded enough that I buy into it and doesn't feel like a complete cartoon. Florian asks, weren't the normal spiders coming out at the end of Lord of the Rings 1 when the Wraith is leaning over the tree? Yes, not all spiders in Middle-earth are giant spiders. Not all spiders in Middle-earth are giant spiders, Florian. Just some of them, like the ones that live in Mirkwood. Spawns of Ungoliant, who was a giant spider from long, long ago. What did I ask? Yes, I asked basically, you guys went from 2 films to 3 films, and you always talked about how challenging the Two Towers was because it was that middle chapter with no beginning and no ending. So you resurrected all those problems, so how have you dealt with them? How have you found the emotional through line in the Desolation of Smaug? And that was the question that he answered. You can actually see me asking the question on Peter Jackson's YouTube page. Just search Desolation of Smaug sneak peek, and you can watch me asking that question. Well, actually, if you hear both spider themes, both Shore and Williams use 8 notes to symbolize the spiders. That's so cool, Jero. That's so cool. Yes, 8 notes for their 8 legs. That's awesome, Jero. I actually didn't know that, but that's fantastic. The crab thing. What is the crab thing? I think it's meant to be like a baby spider. And I think the reason it's meant to be a baby spider is because it makes this moment right here with him like realizing what have I done all the more impactful. Because if he was killing a really menacing, nasty daddy spider, he wouldn't feel as guilty and like just shocked over the fact that the ring made him do this. But the fact that he killed like kind of a smaller, innocent baby spider makes it that much more, you know. What is the ring making him do? I think that was the intention anyways. I think that was the intention. Yes. It does remind me too, yeah, of the, thank you, Rogue, of the spider pit sequence from King Kong. Some of the creatures here and all the crazy shenanigans that are going down. Again, this is another sequence that I felt like was really benefited from just getting a little bit more saturation, because in increasing the saturation, it increases the color separation, and right now everything is kind of a wash in color, and because the background is so complicated with all these twigs and leaves and branches, it starts to get visually really kind of convoluted, and by having a little more saturation on her hair, on the skin tones, it separates those elements from the background in a very pleasing to look at way. Again, to be a broken record, you are not watching my upgraded color grade. That will be released later. Another little moment right here coming up that I cut. Yes, they're taking the Hobbit's 2 eyes and God. And yes, Thomas Valentine, that was a beautiful moment where Martin Freeman couldn't believe what the ring was doing to him. But yes, one of the moments that I cut right here was just the moment of Legolas looking at the picture of Gimli. I think it was definitely fan servicey. It wasn't so much so that I rolled my eyes. But just for me, it wasn't necessary. It wasn't what this film was about. This film was not about setting up Legolas to be the character that he is in the Fellowship of the Ring. That's not what this film was about. And I wanted those, 15 seconds back to keep the thing moving. So I just ended up removing it for that reason. What is my opinion of Mortal Engines, Jero? Oh, gracious. Mortal Engines was not good, my friend. There were elements in it that I liked. I liked the Stephen Lang character. The robot character, I liked that person. But man, Mortal Engines was rough. I felt bad. Yeah. I love the look of the Woodland Realm. It's just so cool. It's a great nod to the look that was created in Lothlorien, speaking of Lothlorien, but also very, very different. It's underground, which is a new place for elves to live. Open and spacious, yes, but also underground. That says a lot about who this king is as compared to Galadriel and her husband, whose name escapes me. Love his crown. Great look. I think Lee Pace is fantastic. If you guys have not seen The Fall with Lee Pace, do yourself a favor. Just visually. And Lee Pace is great. Love the look of the dungeons here. This is another moment that I had to cut out. This whole, I'm not going to even repeat the lines, but it's bathroom humor. And it needed to go. And I think the moment's a lot funnier if Keeley is like, aren't you going to search me? Bang! Slammed in his face. And then I cut the moment right after it too, where Legolas is kind of getting a little bit jealous about Tauriel. And Tauriel's like already like, he's kind of cute and kind of tall for a dwarf. Like, it was just too much too fast. And I really wanted to remove as much as humanly possible any overt statements about Legolas liking Tauriel. I think you definitely feel it in my cuts, but it doesn't need to be talked about. It doesn't need to be talked about. It can just be subtly laced through there. What is bad about fan service, Florian says. I don't know what exactly is meant by it. The way filmmakers certainly should serve fans. I don't actually think that filmmakers need to think specifically about serving fans first. They need to serve the story first. And sometimes those things line up perfectly, Florian. What fans want and what the story needs. For example, I think Avengers Endgame is a perfect example of the fans getting what they want and the story getting what it needs. And so for me, fan service that doesn't serve the story is bad fan service. where it's just about saying, well, the fans want this, even though it's not forwarding this specific story, that's bad fan service in my opinion. But if it lines up, if that fan service lines up with what the narrative needs, I have no problem with it. In fact, bring it on. Celeborn, thank you. Celeborn, I appreciate you. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Robert. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious, Jero, that we're both talking about Endgame. I had not read your comment when I started talking about this. Great minds think alike. Robert asks, will I do a more technical how I fix video or two on the color grading sound editing? It's a good question. If enough people want it, I wouldn't mind talking about that. That could be fun. That could be fun. I love this scene between the two kings. It's just a good face-off. I love simple dramatic scenes in large spectacle films like this, and this simple scene between two actors really works. It really works. You can see them both really excited to get to just have a dialogue scene. It's not about, you know, writing a green screen elk or being in a barrel going down a river. It's just about connecting with another human being, and it really works very well. Lady Vengeance says, The Last Jedi is the perfect example of serving story and fans not knowing what's going for them and the series, and so we ended up with the disgrace of Rise of Skywalker. I really want to keep this all focused on the love, Lady Vengeance, but yeah. Anyways, AI Vlog says, isn't it weird that the Woodland Realm theme is basically a less epic version of the music that played when Gollum is being tortured in Mordor? Interesting. I've never noticed that connection. I'm going to have to play that back. Jero, bad fan service equals Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Again, I'm trying to keep things positive, but I'm not gonna disagree with you guys. This moment was almost too much for me, where Thorin is clearly, in his dwarven language, saying some sort of bad word. I like the fact that they play it on Balin's reaction, just because it's, I don't know, for me, just this idea of, like, he can go, you know what, just a little bit modern feeling to me. So I'm glad that obviously they played it in the dwarven language, but a little bit silly, This is another scene that I did a little bit of cutting down on. So I did not want in any way, shape, or form to hit the audience over the head with this relationship between Tauriel and Legolas. So I just cut out the whole ending where Thandriel talked about how Legolas is taking a shining to her and all that kind of stuff. I also cut out where in the cut that you're watching now, I cut out the reference that Tauriel makes to Dol Guldur, just because, again, we don't get to Dol Guldur in this cut. So I removed that completely and kept it just on Thandriel's unwillingness to leave the Woodland Realm. That was the important part of that scene. And I love the fact that they had Bilbo in that scene so they could keep that thing from his point of view. Again, trying to keep him as the main character, the main point of view that we're viewing all these events from. So let's talk about Keely and Tauriel. Some people just cannot understand why I left their relationship in at all. I don't think it's bad, honestly. I think it has a couple of really big stinker moments in the original cuts. But this scene, for example, I didn't make any cuts to. And I think it's similar to the scene between Thorin and Thandriel. It's just two actors connecting, and it works. You can see them owning the scene and playing it well. Howard Shore's beautiful Feast of Starlight theme is playing, which absolutely is just overwhelmingly gorgeous and powerful. And unlike the scene that I cut, where Tauriel is almost instantly attracted to Keely, he has to earn it here. He has to earn it with his wit and charm, and dashing good looks, of course. But more specifically, his love of light and his promise. The connecting over that love of light, I think is beautiful. It's weird that they don't talk Elvish. It's a nitpick, but it breaks the immersion for me sometimes. Well, alternate movies, elves can speak both the common tongue and Elvish. They don't have to speak Elvish at all times. Will there be a break? Yes, Florian. We'll have a break around the halfway point, probably right after the barrels sequence. We'll take like a 5-minute break. Cupcake says, some thought that Thorin in the movie universe shouldn't have died because he is not the same dwarf king as in the book. What do you think? Would it be fan service if Keely or Feely didn't die? Would it be fan service if they didn't die? I don't think so. I think I mean, Feely and Keely's deaths, their deaths are what affect Thorin and what affect Bilbo. So they don't necessarily get a complete arc. They don't necessarily get to experience some sort of tragic fall like Thorin does. But their deaths affect the main characters in interesting and dramatic ways. So, is it a shame that we didn't get to know them a little bit more and that maybe their deaths didn't mean a little bit more for them specifically? Sure. But ultimately these films are about Bilbo first and foremost and Thorin down beneath that. And the fact that they knew those characters and cared about those characters and those deaths meant something to them made them worth it for me. And no, I think Thorin's death is absolutely earned in this film series, in the sense that it is a very tragic death. It is his own greed that leads to his death. Had he not been consumed in the way that he had, he might have ultimately been able to enter the battle at an earlier time, or face off against Azog in a better way, and defeat him in the way that he potentially could have if he had a different sort of arc. Dari asks, do you like how the dwarves are designed, or would you prefer more book-friendly with all having long beards and colorful hoods? I would prefer a slightly more heightened version than we got in the films, i.e. slightly longer beards. But I like the fact that they're visually different. Speaking of the two dwarves we just saw, Bofer and Dory, I like their looks. I think they look very dwarven even though they don't have long beards. I think some of them, like Feely and Keely, are much less dwarven to me, but I like the fact that we have 13 different looking dwarves that I can very quickly differentiate between visually. So I like that. So do I want them to be a little bit more stylized? Sure. But do I prefer erring on this side versus all of them being long bearded and just having colorful hoods to differentiate them? Yeah, I prefer this look. It's all good, Cupcake. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Your English is fantastic. Thank you, Tim, for that comment about Norse mythology. Good stuff. Alternate movies, I think you misunderstood me. I think sometimes the immersion break. Yes. When the elves talk to one another. I agree. Alternate movies. It would have been cool to have a little bit more elvish spoken between the elves when they're talking to one another. I agree with that. Film versus digital, asks Jero. It completely depends. For this specific series, I think they made a mistake shooting at 3D and on film. Why? Because they had an established look for this universe that people loved. No one was clamoring for 48 frames per second or 3D. These films, I would dare to bet, would have done better had they not had both of those things at the box office. I understand that Jackson is a forward-thinking guy. I like that about them. But give us crazy 3D stuff on your documentaries. Give us crazy 3D stuff on The Lovely Bones and King Kong. But this is an established world, so I felt like film would have been the right choice to go with these ones. But there are certain instances I love digital. Good gracious. We were talking about Gravity a moment ago. The Life of Pi. The Social Network. Those films look amazing because they were shot on digital. I love this moment with Martin Freeman where he's like, oh wait, what do I do now? And I love the set, by the way. Gorgeous. Yeah, it is more timeless and nostalgic. But not all films need to be timeless and nostalgic. Your favorite moment in the whole film, says AI Vlogs, is when Bilbo puts the dwarves in the barrels and rescues them and realizes, he forgot himself. Martin Freeman's... Yes, just like I was saying, it's hilarious. All right. So we got a few cuts coming up here for the barrel sequence. So I'm really excited to announce, again, this is not in this one. I'm sorry that I'm talking about these cuts that you guys can't yet see. But I'm very excited to announce that I completely replaced one of the GoPro shots, and then the other two, because there's 3 GoPro shots in here altogether, the other 2 I actually color graded them and added some kind of Gaussian blur to them to actually make them look more like the aesthetic scene and the rest of the scene. So not completely fixed, but significantly improved, in my opinion. So really excited to share those shots with you. Yes, the Revenant. The Revenant was shot on digital too, and just gorgeous looking. Thank you, Joe. It is a kingly size mug. Got my coffee in it there. I think I always wish that more can be practically done as far as actually shooting in real rivers or in the river slough. But I think what's phenomenal is this whole sequence right here where they're at the Elven Gate. I didn't know for the longest time that all the water is digital. Like, it's just amazing to me that they're able to do that. And I think what makes it work is they mix and match shots, so you're never quite sure what you're looking at. The trick is different every single time. And I think that's a really smart way to go. But again, no, I think that shot's real water. But all the other shots are fake water. It's just crazy to me. Like, that's all fake water. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, people ask me, like, why didn't I significantly or completely cut out the orcs in this sequence? For me, I like the sequence that Peter Jackson constructed, for the most part. Obviously, the elements that I felt like were too big and too over the top, I did cut. So, personal taste. But also, it's what I felt like the film needed pacing-wise. It needed to have a bigger full-in-action set piece. So I left in a lot of the sequence because of that. Luke, thank you for complimenting me on the editing. You are most welcome. Well, I mean, maybe I am an actual Hobbit, and maybe that is, in fact, just a normal mug. Yes, the GoPro shots. For me, the GoPro shots are very similar to Jackson's desire to shoot this thing in 3D and 48 frames per second. He's gutsy. He's an experimenter. He's trying to constantly push the envelope. Sometimes he pushes it a little bit too far or further than people like me prefer. But I appreciate and respect his willingness to really go for things and try and give us something that's new, immersive, and exciting. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. GoPro, asks Jero. It's just a small little camera. It's the one that like athletes oftentimes use when they're skiing or motorbiking. And you can put it in crazy places, like he puts it on the actual barrels themselves. Why does the CGI in some scenes look perfect and in some look total mess? It pisses me off. You can even see green screen sometimes. Yes, there is a green screen moment that's coming up here in a bit that is pretty bad. It's all timing, my friend. It's all timing. Cupcakes. It's all down to... I love calling you cupcakes. It just cracks me up. It all depends on how much time they had and how complicated the shots are. So some of these shots are more complicated. Here comes some GoPro shots in a moment, by the way. I'll point them out when they come up. So in some instances, the simulation is less complicated. In some instances, the green screen that is behind the actors was more properly lit, etc. There are a number of things. Here comes a GoPro shot right here. That's a GoPro shot. So that's an actual river that an actual camera is being washed down. There again is a GoPro shot. So again, all these I've just tweaked them slightly to make them look a little bit more in line with the rest of the footage. But all these shots here, I love the fact that they went out and got real barrels and a real river and composited in these dwarves. I think it just adds to the believability and the reality of the scene so much. Do I like Lucas and the prequels? That is a whole can of worms, my friend, Jero. I do. I like a lot more of Lucas and the prequels than most people. Yes, a lot of these shots look fake and glossy. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And again, I think the ones that work best are the ones that are a combo, where you can't quite tell where the reality ends and the fakery begins. Yeah, 48 frames per second, not the best move, I don't think. But again, some of these shots are so cool because it's a real river that those barrels are going down. So most of this is the same so far as the original edit, but obviously one of the bigger cuts is coming up here in a moment, which for those of you who've seen it are well aware of, which is how I trimmed it down on the infamous bomber shot. And I personally kind of like it. I think it's a great punctuation mark to the end of the scene, but I understand it was a little too much for a lot of people, so I ended up trimming it out significantly, moving some shots around, get Bomber up there, and have him land and take out his axes. And actually, in my extended cuts, I actually cut out just one of the extra spins that occur right there. I just cut out one of the extra spins just to, again, continue to trim down on the heightenedness of that moment, just a skosh. Yeah, the GoPro shots are a little bit jarring, it's true. Oh, Joe, it's your birthday today. Ah, happy birthday. Happy birthday. That's great. Cupcakes, I'm glad. Yeah, the Bomber stuff makes me laugh too. That's good stuff. And yeah, I'm glad that you love the Bomber stuff too. One of the reasons I left it in there for a while is I kept on thinking of, I'll probably show these films to my son when he's probably like 5-ish. My 5-year-old son is going to love that Bomber moment. He's going to love it. He's going to love it. Did I do anything with the 3D shot beats that are sprinkled in, more obvious in the action scene? Can you ask that question a different way, Tim? I'm not sure what you mean there. Did you do anything a lot with the 3D shot beats that are sprinkled in? I'm not sure what you mean by that. So obviously one of the big cuts that occurred right there is we were going to actually at that point cut to Gandalf entering the High Fells. And now we're just going to continue on with the dwarves, which feels so delightful. By the way, guys, I think at the end of this scene, we will pause for a 5-minute bathroom break. FYI. After they make Bard, before they start out across the lake there, we'll give it a bathroom break. So this is where this scene right here, for those of you that are wondering, was where film 1 in the 2-film series was supposed to end. Speaking of bad green screen, oh man, this whole shot right here, that is some bad green screen. This too, like you can see some of the feathering. Again, this all comes down to time. This was a pickup, and they clearly just had a lot less time to pull a good, clean key. And I just feel bad. It's clear that they didn't have enough time. AI Vlog says the difference between the High Elves and the Wood Elves is the difference between Obi-Wan and Anakin. One follows the rules religiously. The other kind of follows the rules but has the same results. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, AI Vlogs. It's a great way to put it. Like that fun silhouette shot of Bard. Epic stuff. Excellent bowman skills. And again, it's such a bummer that they had to have these green screen shots, because the original location, which they had to very quickly evacuate when they were originally shooting because they got flooded out. Just such a gorgeous location. And it's just so clear that... Well, they had new information that they had to include here as well, because this was the beginning of film 2 at one point. So now, or excuse me, this is the end of film 1, so now this is kind of, the midway point for film 2. They had to kind of include some new information in this section. Wouldn't the studio give Jackson more time? I mean, they kind of had locked in to a Christmas release date. So, yeah, at a certain point, as it's always said, it's the famous adage, no film is actually finished, they only ever escape. I love Bard's coat. I love Bard's look with the hair tied back. It's just different enough to Aragorn, which is nice. Oh, I'm sorry, alternate movies. I always feel bad when I point things like that out to people. The fact, like, for instance, that there is bad green screen in a moment. When they haven't noticed it, I've, like, ruined it for you. It's like with a kiddo. It's like you don't want to bring up the taboo subjects with a child too soon, but not too late either, because they're going to figure it out eventually. I don't know how those are that similar, but it was what came to mind. It's always just amazing to me, like, how much I forget that all the dwarven characters, all the dwarven actors are actually full-height humans, because they don't look like it at all. The trick always works. So speaking of good visual effects, that always work for me anyways. That almost always works. Florian says, for me, it is out of character for Bard to shoot them. In the rest of the movies, he's such a caring and upright person. Why would he shoot a hero at a stranger? That's a good question. That is a good question, Florian. I have never thought of it from that specific angle, but you were right. It was a little bit terse. It's a dramatic entrance, thinking filmically. Maybe out of character, but it gives a nice dramatic entrance to be sure. And he was approaching with a stick, you know? He was defending himself. It's good. Cupcake says, for example, Thorin and Thranduil scene, they are cut so bad, you can even see the green screen behind Thorin's crown. Interesting. Really? Can you? I've never noticed that. Now I'm going to have to go back and look. Ah, Tim Wood says, yeah, it seems to me that some of the coming at you shots are used because they knew the film would be shown in 3D. My question was whether they factored that into my own cuts. No, I didn't really change a whole lot of that. Yeah, there are some kind of coming at you shots. Fortunately, not a whole lot of them. And so I didn't feel like I needed to kind of really make any adjustments in my 2D cuts right here. It's so true. Relying on bow and arrows, Gandalf, is a hard thing. Yeah, so after this scene, we'll have the one scene where the orcs are examining the area that the dwarves just vacated. And after that scene, we'll give it a pause. We'll get a 5-minute bathroom break. We'll get back to your questions in just a moment. I've had certain friends like, why didn't you cut this scene? I didn't cut it for a couple of reasons. One, I like the look of this practical orc. It's just nice to get a nice, solid, practical, prosthetic orc in here. And I like the augmentation they did to his eyes. It's very cool. But also it continues to reinforce who is the character of Thranduil, and why is he so resistant to leaving, and what is, more importantly, what does it mean that Tauriel chooses to leave, that she chooses to disobey these orders that are given in this scene, which is their kingdom is closed. Gives a little more power to her character and her deciding to break the rules and to rush out. Yeah, so Luke is commenting about, like, you know, what's up with the green screen? Like, pulling a key is so easy. Yes and no, Luke. I mean, you should see some of the green screens that these artists have to pull and the time that they have to pull it in. It's not always as easy as you might think. Compositing can be incredibly tricky if the green screen is just absolute garbage. But yeah, it is one of those things where sometimes they just don't have enough time. They don't have enough time to do all the things they need to do. I'm still curious, speaking of Colin Nolan using 48 frames per second or 3D, I'm still very curious to see what James Cameron does with the Avatar sequels. I think he's gone back on his own word originally. He was saying he was going to shoot them at 60 frames per second. I don't think he's going to be doing that, but I think he's going to be giving us something new, something crazy. So leave it to Cameron to give us something crazy and new. Yes, we'll absolutely give you a timestamp, Robert, when we have a break. Don't you worry. Why are the orcs CGI? I will comment on the CGI orcs in just a moment here. I love this scene right here. We have some more practical orcs. It's cool stuff. And actually, speaking of CGI orcs looking really cool, I think, for me, this is Bolg's best look in the entire film. The lighting on him, the way the handheld camera kind of comes around, I don't think he looks this good anywhere else in the entire series. It just looks great. Looks great. All right, we'll pause it right here, guys. Coming up in a moment. Right when we cut to the barge and Bard crossing Lake Town. All right, we'll pause it right there, guys. We'll pause it right there. So I just paused it at 1 hour and 1 minute exactly. I paused it at 1 hour and 1 minute exactly. We will be back in 4 minutes. So we'll be back at 13 past. 13 past. See you soon. I'll see if I can answer some of your guys' questions here. Someone in the fan edit forums said that this scene where Thranduil decapitates the orc is a deal breaker for him because Thranduil was an oath breaker. What oath did he break specifically? I'm curious what oath he broke. Anyways, timestamp. Yes, give me the timestamp there. I'm giving away my PS4 to whoever finds the canon bald elf. That's good. That's good. I think Azog looks fantastic in the third film. Some of those close-ups, I agree, alternate movies. Some of those close-ups where he and Thorn are fighting, especially when Thorn's stabbed him, and we have that wide-angle lens on his face. He just, it looks so real. Looks so real. So good. I'm just going to try and make sure I didn't miss any of your guys' great comments here. When he said that he would free him and swore. Look. I get it. Con, I get it. You know, like, if that's a important part to who that character is in the book, it can be off-putting, it can be heartbreaking, even, to have it change in the movie. But for me, does that change at all who the character is in the movie? Does it corrupt his character in the movie, in the filmic version? For me, no. So is it perhaps different to what was presented and established in the book? Maybe. But does it change who he is in the film? I don't think so. So for me, I'm okay with him breaking his oath. And he did free him. He freed his wretched. I mean, he freed his wretched head from his miserable body. I mean, he didn't completely break his oath, right? Yeah, he told him he'd free him. He freed him from life, guys. He freed him from life. That's good. But I love it, and I hold nothing against those that are put off by that know the source material so well. But ultimately, book is different than a film. Book is different than a film. And I honestly don't think that it ruins the character, even if other people do. This is great, guys, by the way. I love having all of you here. We'll be returning in 1 minute, so stand by. Stand by for the excitement. See you, Con. Thanks so much for sticking around. The orc wouldn't agree. Yes, the orc wouldn't agree. Unfortunately, only his twitching body can shake its head. Yeah, I'm torn about the look of Dane from the third film. I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get there. There are some shots that I think he looks really excellent in. I think they did a great job. And I do, similar to what we've been talking about with these looks that have had to change after they've shot stuff. I think his CG look, like the design, is better than his prosthetic design. But for me, I always see a CG character, so it's a bummer that it is like that. Yes, want to talk about what you're afraid of for the Amazon series. Thank you. Guys, if I say I'm going to talk about something and I don't come back to it, please remind me. I tell this to my students all the time. My mind is only so much of a steel trap. It can only hold so much stuff. All right, we're going to be starting here, and we'll start the movie again, and I will talk about my fears with the Amazon series. Okay. All right, so again, we are starting at 1 hour and 1 minute exactly, counting down from 10. On 0, we push play. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, on 0, 2, 1, 0, and we're off. Okay, so some of my fears with the Amazon series. I think I fear both extremes, alternate movies. I fear them being so focused on the rich, dense mythology that Tolkien created and being so faithful to that and so detailed in that it's drudgery. It just moves so slowly. It's like, well, we got to include this little detail and this little detail. And it's focused not enough on the forward momentum of the plot. If you've read the Silmarillion, there are only a handful of sequences in that book that are really plot-centered. The whole thing with Berian and Luthien is one of the great examples where there's an actual plot that's been laid out. And the rest of it, there is plot that can be found, that can be mined and discovered, but a lot of it is like a history. So I'm fearing that maybe they will lean too heavily into just trying to make it this really slow, very detailed, slow as molasses narrative. But I'm also concerned that they just make it too Hollywood, and that it's not respectful to the lore, that it doesn't know how to make it feel like Tolkien's world. And I think Peter Jackson, in his best moments, was able to strike that balance between a plot that had a nice rhythm and pulse to it, and one that also felt like it possessed the tone and the DNA of Tolkien himself and Tolkien's material. So I'm concerned that they'll err one direction or the other. I don't want them to make it just for fans of the book series, and I don't want them to just make it for fans of movies. I want to find that middle ground somehow. Bring both together, like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films did. Gandalf says, such fun seeing what my ladies were up to while I was on the most history-changing and dangerous journey in 400 years. It's so true. And not laddies, excuse me. Your laddies. Yes, it's so true, Gandalf. I'm glad that you're enjoying seeing what they were doing while you were off, saving the world, basically. I love this whole sequence of the fish being dumped onto them. By the way, speaking of editors, there's the true editor right there, Jabez Olsen, that Bart is talking to. Hats off to you, sir. You did a brilliant job with these films, along with Peter Jackson. All respect, all respect. This just cracks me up, just the fish that are being dumped on them. And the specific actors that Peter Jackson chose to dump fish on, too. Like, he didn't choose every single actor to do this, too. Like, you don't see Martin Freeman getting fish dumped on. It's just, Mark Hadlow and Adam Brophy? Is that his name? So good. The look of Lake Town. So good. So, a lot of this was completely CG. But some of the shores of Lake Town and stuff were shot at Lake Pukaki near Mount Cook in the South Island of New Zealand, and just one of the most gorgeous places I have ever been in my entire life. Like, the photo you're looking at right now makes it look desaturated as compared to what it is in real life. Like, it's just so vibrant. The glacial, just like blue water, and the sky, and the yellows of the grass, just absolutely gorgeous. And they actually filmed on these shores for the Battle of the Five Armies after the attack on Lake Town occurred. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous place to visit. Just, it blows me away. Yes, I love this theme as well. Very different sounding to any other theme that we've heard in the Middle-earth space, but just gives us that sort of it feels almost like the Renaissance, as do the styles of this place. And I've talked about this before, but I like the fact that these sets look kind of like the Pirates of the Caribbean, in the sense that you can tell that it's a set, but it's so detailed and so unique and stylized. It's great. I really love the look of the light, the production design. Just bravo. So very, very cool. Timestamp, we are at 1 hour and 5 minutes. 1 hour and 5 minutes and 37 seconds, 38 seconds, 39 seconds, etc. Yes, taking a hatchet to Alfred's screen time. It had to happen. It did. I even took out a moment coming up here in a moment where Alfred's like, we know where you live. And Bard comes back with, it's a small town. Everyone knows where everyone lives. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary. It's like, that was not a funny moment and didn't really add any extra details to the plot. These are Peter Jackson's pugs right here, apparently. I kept their cameo in. Someone's cameo that I did cut out that I felt very bad that I cut out was Stephen Colbert's cameo. It was just because mainly I didn't want to have the whole sequence with the dwarves coming out of the toilet, because we can just move along. We don't need that kind of just literal bathroom humor in the film, and it just helps the pace of the film to get through that sequence a bit quicker. This is one of the few sequences that I did leave in with Alfred and the Master. I love Stephen Fry, but his kind of like acid reflux, he overdoes it way too much, and it's very distracting. And I wish I was able to trim it down just a little bit more. In the extended edition, I did add back in one more scene with Alfred and the Master, and it's the one where they're talking about the prophecy, although I did trim that one down even a little bit too. There were a couple of, again, just bathroom humor jokes that were in that scene that I'm like, I'm not trim those right on out there. So even my extended cut, these two characters don't get a lot of screen time. Is that a PewDiePie reference? I don't know. What PewDiePie reference are we referring to? I was not intentionally referencing PewDiePie. Vibrant and saturated. It's perfect for The Hobbit. Absolutely. That's what the Hobbit's all about, man. Yes, Stephen Colbert was one of the background characters. He had a little eye patch that he flips down, but unfortunately for him, I had to cut him. Sorry, Stephen. Sorry. Which is just, that's a shame, because he is, Lord of the Rings is his religion. Yes. Sorry, Lady Vengeance, you will not see that cameo. But you can look it up on YouTube. You can watch it in isolation. You're welcome, Florian, for cutting that kind of humor. My wife is the best litmus test for, is the bathroom humor gone too far? And so I kind of just, I watch her while watching these kind of movies and go, oh, is she rolling her eyes? Okay, she is. All right, it's too much. Don't need it. So, and it felt so nice to get from this sequence to, bam, they're already in Bard's house. Let's move right along. Where can you catch the re-edit? Stick one. Simply email me. Email address is down in the description below, and I will get you the cuts. Oh, got it. My bad. I don't know enough about PewDiePie to catch that reference. I apologize for not being in the know. Do you think you will ever make a remastered version if you get a digital rip with separate audio channels, which would allow smoother editing process? I'm pretty proud of the audio mixing. Honestly, though, like Del Mar, if there are specific places that you feel like the audio mixing is too obvious and it's not good, then let me know, and I'd love to try and clean it up. I don't think it's possible to get one where all the audio channels are separated unless I was to talk to Peter Jackson himself. So I don't think it's going to happen. Someday I'm sure that I will be able to rip a 4K Blu-ray, and I'll probably redo the edits at that point so I can have a 4K version of my edits. Yeah, I'm crazy. But it will probably just take relinking the media, honestly. Going back to my extended cuts, there are a couple of shots there of Girion that were actually in the extended edition prologue of An Unexpected Journey, and those have made their way into the prologue of my extended cut of An Unexpected Journey. I'm glad that helps the pacing in Lake Town for you a lot. I agree. Lake Town, I think, for me, is a necessary pit stop, but it outstayed its welcome in the theatrical cut anyways. Wow, Luke Martin. That's a big question. Luke Martin asked me if I was tasked to remake The Lord of the Rings. How would I go about it? That's a massive question. This is a bit of a distraction from that question as I kind of think about how would I even answer that question. But I have very much enjoyed, I wish I could call him out by his YouTube channel name, but there's someone out there right now who's putting out a series of videos of recasting The Lord of the Rings. And he's made a lot of great choices of who he'd recast these parts as. And it's just fun to watch and to think about, what Lord of the Rings could look like if it was remade. I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I mean, it's a huge question. And I love so much of what Peter Jackson did. I think there are certain things that I would probably try and focus in on just a little bit more. Thematic ideas that I might try and focus in on just a little bit more. But especially Fellowship of the Ring for me it's as close as perfection as you can get. So it would be hard to consider what I would do differently and how I would do the Lord of the Rings differently. If I was to do The Hobbit differently, it would be shot on film and it would be 2 movies. Yes, you just know there's going to be a flashback voiceover scene when Balin is around Bilbo. It's so true. If you want a flashback scene to be more interesting, give it to Ken Stott. His voice makes anything awesome. Have you edited all 3 movies into one tighter movie? I'm very interested in what that would have done. Well done, man. Thanks, Stick One. I have not done that. Versions like that exist out there. And there are elements that I like about them, but for the most part, they just don't work as film. They're super choppy. I feel like I'm driving down a road with a bunch of potholes and just going the whole time because I can feel every single jarring cut as sequences are removed. The pacing just doesn't work. The rhythm of the piece doesn't work. The transitions don't work. And that's no disrespect. No disrespect to those that have done that. They really did the best that they could. But just given the material that we were provided by Peter Jackson and his team, it just doesn't work to make it into one film with the material that we have, in my opinion. There's a rumor that there will be a 4K version out of the Hobbit. Yes. Do you think they will put out an extended edition? We'll finally have some extra scenes. I don't think they'll put out an extended edition on these 4K releases, but Cupcakes, I do think they probably will finally include some of the deleted scenes. And I can't tell you how I'm pretty confident that that will be the case. But let's just say I have some insider information, and I'm, because of that, almost certain that we'll finally get to see some of those deleted scenes. Like Thranduil and Gandalf chat about the gems. I'm not sure what that was in reference to. I apologize, Cupcakes. If you had to choose a different country to represent the look and feel of Middle-earth, where would you film? Couple of thoughts. I think, it's kind of obvious, like certain places in Ireland and Scotland, I think would be gorgeous. They, for a hot second, were thinking about going to somewhere in Eastern Europe for the Hobbit films because of all the just business problems they were having in New Zealand right before they shot the Hobbit films. And I think some places there would be pretty cool. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, and just being partial to that place, I think you can make a pretty awesome looking Lord of the Rings in Middle-earth in that specific area of the world. We should have a Lord of the Rings watch party, says Thomas Valentine. Okay, if we have to. Would you like a spin-off movie similar to the games? I have never played a game, but the story cutscenes look awesome. I'm never a huge fan of spin-off stories that take place too close to the main storyline that we know. So, Solo, for example, a Star Wars story, Rogue One, have elements that I like in them, but I don't need to hang out with Aragorn hunting for Gollum. I don't know if that's what you're referring to with the games and stuff like that, but I love the idea of going to the Second Age for the Amazon series. I love the look of this scene. So cool. There's a moment coming up here that I reinserted from the extended cut of Bilbo standing up for Thorin. It just felt so important because A, it kept their relationship in focus, and B, it's a scene that we actually get paid off in film 3, where Bilbo reminds Thorin, like, it's our honor that's on the line. I was there, I vouch for you, I promised. So I needed to put that moment, back into this scene. Love the look of this scene, so cool. The first cut of The Lord of the Rings 1 was 4 hours long. I'd love to watch some of the deleted scenes. Me too. Yeah, and some of those scenes are in the trailers. So, for example, the Moria orcs chase the Fellowship out of Moria into Lothlorien, and actually some of the Lorien elves fight them off, and they shot that scene. And you can see some of those moments in the behind the scenes and in the trailers. And I'd love to see that deleted scene. Now, I don't think I want it reinserted. I think there's a reason that Peter Jackson left it on the cutting room floor, but I'd love to just see it, even if it's an unfinished version. I completely agree. Interesting comments about the torture theme in the Lorien elves. I'd love to hear that myself. The first black person in Middle-earth. I'm trying to think if there's any other in Lord of the Rings. No, I think you're right. I think that you're right. This is, and I like that. I like that a lot. It said a lot about the culture of Lake Town, that it is this group of this melting pot of people that have come from far and wide to congregate at this lake, this trading port. Yes, it's fantastic. Didn't Peter Jackson say that an Ultimate Edition of Lord of the Rings could be released on its 25th anniversary? I think he said that glibly. I don't think he was completely serious that he would do an Ultimate Extended Edition. I think it was always kind of a joke, kind of always said lightly. So he might, but I don't think he's ever been too serious about that. I was talking about the fact that it was cut from the third movie, and those 5 seconds would explain a lot about Thranduil. Yes, Cupcakes. In my extended edition, that moment with Gandalf talking to Thranduil about the jewels and how they belonged to his wife. It's in my extended cut. So, really excited to share that with you. I would have loved to explore Erebor. It's a fascinating idea of a kingdom inside a mountain. The houses and the markets, and its architecture is beautiful. We've only ever seen snippets of the halls and rooms. Yeah. I mean, I loved the peek at Erebor that we got from the prologue, but yeah, ultimately we don't get to see it that much. I had the same thought about Moria when the Fellowship was walking through that massive area with all the columns. So imagining what that would look like when it was hustling and bustling with actual, dwarves. It'd be amazing. So this doesn't have anything to do with Lake Town at all, but it does have to do with kind of the similar sort of pit stop, so to speak, that we made in the second chapter of the Lord of the Rings series, that being Edoras, and I was able to visit Edoras. This is something that I had to, on my own, find. There are tours that could take you out there, but I'm like, no, I'm just going to look it up. I'm not going to pay anybody. So I was able to, on my own, go and find Edoras on the South Island of New Zealand, just west of Christchurch, and it was quite the successful moment for me. And this for me is the best stuff from Stephen Fry. He's forgotten about his little acid reflux thing, and he's, a much more compelling, interesting character when he's not just being comedic dope. And the scene that I reinsert into the extended edition does kind of continue to explain his motivation as to why he would help the dwarves here. He's starting to feel that the people are turning on him, they're wanting riches and treasure, and he's realizing, this is the way to get that, so I'm going to help them out. Yes. Yeah, honestly, I mean, if Peter Jackson released those epic 8-hour cuts, we would all watch them. We would all watch them. They might not be the satisfying cinematic experiences of the theatrical cuts, but we would all watch them. Of course. Sorry if I've missed any of your guys' great comments. I like this moment between Fili and Thorin and Keely. Like it finally, for me, starts to explain who these characters are, what they're about, why this mission is important to them uniquely. Kind of going back to what we were talking about as far as, do Keely and Fili's deaths feel earned or like they're consequential to their specific character arcs? I would argue still that no, ultimately they're more consequential to Thorin and Bilbo's in this representation right here. But little moments like that give you something, they give you a slight indication as to who these people are and why they're on this quest and what it means to them. They're next in line, Tolkien writing The Hobbit, women are too complicated, I'm just going to leave them out. Yeah, I mean, this is not the right time or place to really talk about this, but some people accuse, Tolkien of being sexist or misogynist, and if you've studied him for any length of time, you just know that that's just not true, from what we know about him anyways. He has a great respect for women, and the women that he puts in this series, from Arwen to Galadriel, not Tauriel, because he didn't put Tauriel in here, but they're powerful, and they have a lot to add to the world. There's a little moment coming up here that's not in this cut, but I'm really excited that I'm putting back into the extended edition. It's just a small little moment where Bilbo and the company are marching up the slopes of Erebor, and Bilbo's commenting just how quiet it is, and there's no trees, and he sees a little bird flying around. Just a small little moment. Didn't need it in this theatrical cut, but I wanted to put it back into my extended cut nonetheless. So this isn't the exact place that they filmed, but this is near Mount Doom, and I was able to stop here near Mount Ruapehu on the North Island. This is not Mount Ruapehu. This is a mountain near Mount Ruapehu, which looks pretty epic. It's like a real volcano top and everything. That's Mount Ruapehu right there, where they filmed Mount Doom. They filmed a lot of this in the Rock and Pillar Range on the South Island for the slopes of Erebor. This is another one of my favorite cuts right here, because originally after this moment we cut to Gandalf entering Dol Guldur, and it makes sense because they're talking about Gandalf entering Dol Guldur because we're teeing up that moment. But now what this moment becomes is Bilbo realizing that he needs to take on the mantle of not a leader, but he needs to really own this quest. He needs to act. He needs to let go of the floaties, so to speak, the train wheels that were Gandalf. Gandalf the Grey, I'm talking to you right now out there. He needs to realize that he needs to grow up and do this without Gandalf. And that feeling of his growth and maturation and the conscious thought that he needs to do that is so much clearer without the Gandalf stuff in there. And I really like that. The moment where he finds the stairs is always a little bit confusing to me because it's kind of obvious. I wish it was a little more hidden, a little more kind of a harder thing to find. But nonetheless, it's a gorgeous design, that statue. And it's very cool looking when they get up there. I love the fact that they have this full-sized dwarven head right here in the foreground. This is for the next film, says Robert. This is for the next film, but your edit of Thorin's funeral is fantastic. Perfect addition. Jackson couldn't have done better. Thank you so much. It was really fun for the Thorin scene, the Thorin funeral scene, rather, in Battle of the Five Armies, to get that Gandalf voiceover back in there. That was only ever in the special features. Really fun to get that in there. Cupcake says, poor Feely, he had to have more screen time. Why? He didn't really... why? Really, at least with Thorin, he is the heir to the throne, and it means nothing at the end. Yeah, I mean, Cupcakes, I do agree. I feel like Feely kind of got the short end of the stick in this series, especially between he and his brother. And it is a bummer that he couldn't get more. And I don't know how much of that was down to the fact that Dino Gorman, who plays Feely, kind of came on board at the last second, or just them realizing that they didn't have the ability to, give him that much more focus. Honestly, I mean, that would probably be, someone was asking me if I was to remake the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think with the Hobbit trilogy, if I was to remake it, one of the things I probably would change, I would cut completely the Legolas character and give all of Legolas' screen time to one of the dwarves, just to get to know them better, like Feely. It's not because I don't like Legolas. It's not because I don't like some of his moments in this series. And actually, I like what he adds specifically to Thranduil, and makes Thranduil a father, and what it means to be a father, and allows that growth and maturation for that character. But, yeah, it would have been really nice to have just a bit more screen time with characters like Feely. I agree. AI Vlog says, I strongly recommend that you play the Lego Lord of the Rings game. It's very funny, revisiting old scenes and adding some humor to it. Also, it's a very short... It takes 5 days. Okay, but that's good. It only takes 5 days. That's good to know. Because, again, if I start down the dark path of playing a video game, forever it will dominate my destiny. Consume me, it will. PJ did a very bad job with it. Look, I don't know. I don't know if I would go so far as to say that Peter Jackson did a bad job with it. He chose to focus his narrative on other elements other than some of these side dwarves. And in so doing, especially in these cuts, those other elements shine through a bit more clearly. And you can't, in the end, have your focus be on too many different characters, too many different scenes, too many different set pieces, or you lose sight of who and what these films are really about. And in my cuts anyways, I try and keep the focus on Bilbo and Thorin. And so I didn't think that having too many of the side characters' motivations and plot lines beefed up were helpful, especially in the theatrical cut. So one of the things I do in the extended cut is I allow characters like Thranduil to have a bit more screen time and explanation. But I really wanted these films to be told Bilbo-centrically the first time around in these theatrical cuts. Hey Chris, do you have a Discord server or a subreddit I could join? I don't, sorry. Why cut Legolas when you can cut Tauriel? Because I like Tauriel more than Legolas in these films. Sorry. The idea of separate audio channels is when you rip them, you can do 5.1 or 7.1 with these channels. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Can you, Delmar? I didn't realize that you could separate them when you rip them. Learn new things every day. Thank you for letting me know that you can separate them. Thank you for letting me know. That's very helpful to know. I may just have to look into that. This scene right here is one of the ones that I pumped just a little more color separation and saturation into. I don't hate the color grade, but it's just a little bit too much of a wash, kind of a blue wash for my taste. And it starts to get a little bit visually complicated because it is so much of a wash. So I just wanted to separate things just a little bit by increasing the color separation. Yeah, no, Cupcakes, I didn't mean to dismiss your comment there about why cutting Legolas when I can cut Tauriel. I like Tauriel because she allows me to get to know a different character, and that character tells me a lot about the people that she comes from, the Woodland Realm. I like the fact that she is part of one of the dwarves' stories, and the fact that they, have this small relationship, especially in my cuts. It's just very much a side thing. But it adds to that dwarven character, and I want to get to know the dwarven characters because those are my main characters. So, yeah, that's why I would keep her around over Legolas. The moment Thorin catches the key is way too convenient. Is it convenient? Sure. Is it cinematic? Yes. Doesn't make it a perfect moment, but I kind of like it. Because he's been calling for him for a second. He's been saying, come back, come back, come back. So, he came back. It is convenient. I'm not disagreeing. Love this moment. Apparently on set, they didn't really show them exactly what would happen when they opened the door. And so when he pushed that door open right there, that was kind of like their genuine reactions of like, whoa, there it is. Another one of the scenes that I labored over, again, not in the version you're watching now, but in the newest version that will be coming out pretty soon, labored over in the color grade to try and bring in just a little more color separation and vibrancy into this interior. I get what they were trying to do with the original grade. It's kind of, it's a dim. There's mystery here. It should feel a little bit more lifeless, right? This is not a place that has the life of the dwarves. It kind of feels sickly because the dragon sickness is over it. But for my taste, they pushed that sickly look just a little bit too far. I really love Ballin too. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, and the door opening moment, Thomas, is great. It really is great. Hope you guys are enjoying your caffeine like I am. It is really interesting going back. Actually, one of the things I did when color grading this scene for the new version that will be coming out later is I went back and watched the original trailer. And the original trailer has a very different color grade for this specific scene. And I couldn't bring it completely to the color grade that they originally had there, nor did I want to. But I nudged it just a little bit closer. And it was nice having that kind of benchmark to aim at. Paul Walker, Ballin is my favorite dwarf character. Yeah, he's actually my favorite dwarf character as well. He for me is not only beautifully acted, he's got a lot of screen time. Like he actually has a kind of like a character that is unique from the rest of the dwarves. I like his relationship with Thorin, and I just like his look a lot. He looks quintessential dwarf while also looking utterly unique, which is great. Cupcake says, Thorin is majestical in everything he does. It hurts me. He always has these shots from down to up. He's looking at the sky. Has become a meme. Yes, Thorin, a lot of his looks and stuff have become memes and such because, Richard Armitage, he's got that going on. He's got that epicness going on. Definitely. I wish that I could have cut down this whole sequence just a little bit more. Like, if I could have reduced it by, 15 to 20% more, that would have been the best. But again, what I was provided by Peter Jackson just didn't allow me to do so to the extent that I wanted to. So I cut out some of the stuff with a Bofur struggling with an orc later on. I cut out the section where he actually collects the... Gosh, it's escaping me. The Avalas from the pig's mouth. Not as much as I wanted to. Favorite Damien Chazelle film? That's a funny question. But also, it seems like you know me because I love Damien Chazelle. Honestly, I think my favorite Damien Chazelle film is his first, which is Whiplash. I think that's his first. I apologize if it's his first feature film. I apologize if it's not. Might not be his first feature film that he directed, but that's my favorite, nonetheless. Yeah, Luke Martin, kind of your point of it being, convenient, but also it being just a fantasy hero moment. I agree. And I think there is a balance to be struck. And that's one of the things that you've got to always think about as a writer and a director. Can you get away with something, and is it affecting the audience in the way that you want it to? It's always a great question to ask. I can't help but wonder if this was deliberate symmetry by Tolkien. Oh, earlier. Paul Walker says, it was one of the things that I noticed about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit was that Bilbo was a much better adventurer than Frodo, and Aragorn was a much better leader than Thorin. Interesting. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Tolkien himself talked about the difference between Bilbo's adventure and Frodo's quest. An adventure is a there and back again experience. A quest is kind of a one-way journey in a lot of ways, and goes about, and so embarking on it, you are forever changed. So even though they kind of turned Bilbo's adventure into a quest in the movies, in the books anyways, it was always intended to be a much more ineffectual, in the second that it doesn't affect him in the same way that Frodo's quest changes him. Cupcake says, I don't think that Thorin was a bad leader. He is more human than Aragorn. Aragorn is too perfect. I don't know if Aragorn's too perfect, although they did, kind of dirty him up just a little bit in the films, which I appreciated. Made him a bit more of a reluctant hero. But we do learn about later on that ultimately Aragorn isn't perfect and his bloodline's not perfect. So, it is what it is. This is another sequence that in the new color grade, that again has not yet been released, is bumped up just a little bit. Made things look a little more golden. Yes, I understand they wanted this thing to look sickly. Dragon sickness is over it right now, right? But it just wasn't quite for me golden enough, and I wanted just a little more saturation. Just talking about Thorin over in the comment section, I like that. Yeah, Thorin's an interesting one. And I felt like they almost... They were close to doing all that they could with the character. I think there were a few of that moment passes the jewel. A few missed opportunities. Again, I like the place that they brought Thorin to as a character by the end of An Unexpected Journey. And I felt like they just weren't able to add enough new scenes in the 3-film version to kind of continue that growth and eventual decay in the way that felt natural. So he has this beautiful rise in An Unexpected Journey, specifically in his relationship with Bilbo. And then we kind of lose some of that in the process of the Desolation of Smaug. And obviously we have the great moment that's coming up here where he has the sword to Bilbo and where Balin's questioning him, saying, he's not just a burglar, his name's Bilbo, that kind of thing. But we kind of lose sight of his relationship with Bilbo up to that moment. And I felt like they could have, if they had known from the outset that they were making 3 films, plotted in just a couple of more moments to kind of clarify where that relationship was at. This introduction to Smaug is just masterful. I think it's some of the best stuff that Peter Jackson's ever done. It's so slow. It's so, in the best possible way, Jaws-like. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. Glad you're looking forward to the colors, the changes in the color grade there. I'm really excited to share those with you. Robert says, I do think that PJ and team made fantastic narrative alterations to LOTR. Yeah, I think overall they did a really great job of augmenting and changing things just a little bit. Obviously, why is Smaug blue? He's not actually blue. He is red. He's definitely red. But he is, in certain instances, reflecting the green walls around him. That's why he might look blue to some. But yeah, the new color grade that I've done for this, I'm pretty pleased with it. It was a simple couple adjustments. I didn't do anything too crazy, but it was nice to adjust just slightly. And again, I love how much time he takes with this. It just fills my heart with gladness because we've taken 1.5 films to get to this moment. And there's no need to rush it. There's no need to rush it at all. And as far as the look of Smaug, I think they found a pretty classic good look for a dragon. Having seen some of the other versions that they could have gone, the other directions they could have gone, I definitely think this is one of the better versions that they landed on. It's not exactly how I imagined it, but I do enjoy it. I just wanted to note one of the places, because a lot of this was created in the computer, obviously. Some of the places that I visited in New Zealand were some of their post-production facilities. So I sent an email to Park Road Post introducing myself as a filmmaker and saying that I would love to check out their facilities. And they very kindly showed me all around their facilities, which was fantastic. I also was not able to go into What a Digital, but this is What a Digital right here. They were hard at work on the Desolation of Smaug when I was down there in New Zealand. So I was able to walk into the lobby and meet one of the iconic stuntmen who actually works behind the desk when he's not being a stuntman. And that was fantastic. Of course, the Weta Cave, which is, definitely a place that a lot of people can go and tour. And I love being in there and seeing this specifically. This is actually the original design for the Witch King. So for me, the reason I wanted to show this during this live stream is it goes to show that Peter Jackson has always done this. He's never... Just because he shot something doesn't mean that it's set in stone. So for those of you that don't know, he actually shot almost all of the Witch King's sequences in Return of the King with this specific armor. And then after the fact, decided to look too much like Sauron from the prologue. Love that moment with the eye. It's great. Looked too much like Sauron from the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring, so they reshot everything. So with the Witch King. So yeah, just goes to show that he's always been one to never back away from just continuing to push things to get them right, which I appreciate about him as a filmmaker. Yes. Yeah, Martin's amazing in this whole sequence. Luke Martin, I was just impressed that the short time between Unexpected Journey and Desolation, they redesigned Smaug's character model and removed 2 legs from him. Yes, Luke, they did completely redesign Smaug. Very similar to what they had to do with Gollum between Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. They completely redesigned the look of the character. And yeah, in this instance, took him from a 4-legged creature to a 2-legged creature, which I think looks a lot cooler. And I can't remember. I think I've missed it. I was reading your guys' comments, but I love the moment where Smaug says, "But do you now?" And it's just this glorious, massive shot of him towering over Bilbo, this little hobbit. Just truly wonderful. Tim Wood says, do you think it's a big part of being a filmmaker/creator to admit when you're wrong? Brief distraction from that question. Tyler, yes, this is the Sherlock Watson reunited right here. For those of you that don't know, Martin Freeman, who plays Bilbo, and Benedict Cumberbatch, who voices Smaug, played Sherlock Holmes and Watson in a BBC fantastic rendition of Sherlock Holmes on the BBC. And this is their reunion, which is fantastic. Do I think it's a big part of a filmmaker/creator to admit when they're wrong? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think it's, as a human, important to note when you've made a mistake or done something wrong. But I don't know if artists should feel the need to constantly go around and apologizing for doing something wrong, or that they would have changed it or done something differently. I just think of J.K. Rowling and what she's doing to the Harry Potter series right now. And like for me, like that's this version where like she's apologizing for things that she doesn't need to apologize for. And it's getting out of hand. But yeah, I mean, look, if there's a big thing that someone did that they're like, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. I remember Steven Spielberg, after putting out like the special edition of E.T. with some like CGI'd version of E.T., he later said that wasn't the best move. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Let me re-release the original version. Things like that, yeah, I think are great. And I think one of the things I do appreciate about Peter Jackson is his candor in all of this. You know, there are instances where he admitted that he was really in over his head, that he wasn't sure what he was doing on set. And the problem is a lot of those things, like I talked about in my original video essay, are just taken out of context. People are like, oh, this is proof that he had no idea what he was doing the entire time, which is not what he said. But I do appreciate, just, I think, for two reasons. One, it is a really encouraging thing to hear for me as a filmmaker, that even the biggest and the best, someone like Peter Jackson, can feel like he's in over his head, like he's just on set making it up as he's going along. But then two, I think it's just helpful to demystify the sort of like, you know, ridiculous pedestal that a lot of people put these big time creators on. Like, they're just humans and they're just doing their best, and we shouldn't think that they're going to make every single move perfectly. Sorry about this, catching up on some of your guys' stuff. Ori says, I was impressed with Bilbo and Smaug's encounter, but Smaug then having to chase the dwarves like some kind of undervalued their encounter because he was suddenly a dragon who can't catch the dwarves. Yes, Ori, which is why I cut down on that sequence significantly. Yeah, Rowling, I don't want to get off on a tangent with her, but it is a kind of a bummer what's kind of happening with what she's doing right now. I don't disagree with everything that she's saying, but a lot of it's just feels a little bit desperate. I feel bad for her. Yeah, just focus on telling the stories. There's a moment coming up here where originally we cut back to Gandalf. It's actually a couple of moments previously that I just talked right over where we would have cut back to Gandalf and we just kept it with Bilbo, and it just, it feels so much better to stay in with that main storyline. And some of them were trickier, though, all this to say. Some of them were trickier. I always wonder what happened to this plot line, because they had the Windlance. They had this whole thing set up with the Windlance here at the end of Desolation, and it's not even mentioned in Battle of the Five Armies. And I'm curious what occurred there. I thought for sure that in the extended edition of the Battle of the Five Armies, there would be a moment where Bard was running towards the Windlance and it was destroyed by Smaug, but they didn't even give us that moment in the extended edition, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that happened that way. Did you mention that you know what Peter Jackson's thoughts are on his versions? Yeah, Gandalf. Yeah, Gandalf. He did. Peter Jackson's thoughts on my versions of the Hobbits? Oh, I have no idea. If that's what you're asking, I have no idea what Peter Jackson's thoughts are on my. I have no way of knowing that. It would be lovely to ask. I should do a cut of Fantastic Beasts. Ooh, that'd be hard. I just came here. Do you already show the re-edit of The Hobbit? We're actually watching the re-edit of The Hobbit right now, Ori. And if you'd like a version of it, by all means, shoot me an email. Email address in the description below, and I will send you them. Such a great job on the edits, says Camera. I hadn't seen the movies since they came out, and I was thinking in my mind, did he even remove anything? I know that's the point. Bravo, sir. You deserve more views. Thank you so much, Cameron. Yes, I mean, honestly, I know some people mean it as a mean comment. Like, I couldn't tell even where you cut stuff out. But for me, that's a big compliment. I want these things to be seamless experiences. I just want you to, in the end, just to feel different. Like, that just felt better. That's what I'm going for. I don't necessarily want people knowing, oh, he cut that line out or he cut that moment out. I just, in the end, want people to get to the end of the movie and be like, I actually felt myself really enjoying that a lot more. Cupcakes says, I think people go too harsh on the Hobbit trilogy. There are a lot of things that, for me, are much better in The Hobbit than The Lord of the Rings. For example, the actors and the acting. I don't know if I agree about that. I think the acting in Lord of the Rings is pretty phenomenal. But I do, too, think that the Hobbit trilogy is pretty great, which is one of the reasons why I've taken so long to do all this re-edit work on them, because there's a great foundation to get to. This is one of the moments that I kind of had to finagle. Some of the lip sync is just a little bit off on Smaug there because I had to kind of swap some shots in and out because originally Smaug was talking about the darkness that was growing and we cut to Gandalf locked up in a cage in Dol Guldur. And obviously that's not seen in my version, but very proud of this edits because they're completely invisible, even for me. Why do we see fire from the tunnel when Smaug has not yet used his weapon? Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I think at some point probably in the shoot that they thought that he might have blasted some fire at Bilbo. And ultimately they probably rearranged that moment in the edit. It probably was intended to happen after Smaug billows the fire at Bilbo. That's probably where it was meant to be in the original edit. But alas and alack, it is what it is. It is what it is. Cheers, Chris. Have meeting I have to head to. All right, see you, Thomas. See you, Thomas. Can't wait to see you for Battle of the Five Armies. AI Vlogs, that's very kind of you. I don't know if Peter Jackson would hire me on the spot as his editor after seeing this. I hope that I am always communicating things with complete deference and respect to him as I'm talking about these things. Again, I love these films, Peter. If you ever watch these, gosh, if Peter Jackson ever watched this, that would be an amazing thing for me to know. But I love these films, and I just wanted to, dust them off, make them a little bit better. Yes, I will, Cameron. I will definitely be doing a Battle of the Five Armies rewatch next. Not sure if I'm going to be doing it next Thursday night or next Friday night. Maybe I'll have another little video where I have you guys vote. But yes, I will absolutely be doing one for Battle of the Five Armies. I'm almost tempted to watch it right now. I'm not going to, so don't start screaming that I do it. The way that this one ends, for me, really demands that you watch Battle of the Five Armies, like, right afterwards, just because it is such a huge cliffhanger without a big climactic finish. So I always really enjoy watching my cut of Desolation next to my cut of Battle of the Five Armies for that reason, but there's just not enough time today to do that, so we'll have to do it next week. Hey, Chris, do you do voice impressions? I thought your first two you did in the live stream sounded great. I can't remember what voice impressions I did during the live stream. No, I don't really do voice impressions. I am a bit of an actor, but voice impressions is not one of my intended focused on fortes. Wasn't it over PJ's head because he had to fill in for Guillermo's last minute? That's one of the reasons he felt like he was a little bit in over his head in certain instances, to be sure. So to put it in perspective, from what I recall, he had about 3 to 4 years of pre-production on Lord of the Rings, and on The Hobbit, as director, he had about 3 to 4 months of pre-production, which is absolute lunacy. And that would be really hard for anyone. I don't care how experienced you are. Do you think the Lord of the Rings films would benefit from a similar re-edit? Or do you think they just don't need it? Robert asks. I love Lord of the Rings. I don't think they really need any adjusting, especially the theatrical cuts. The Fellowship of the Ring theatrical cut is just mwah. I love the extended edition too, just as a Middle-earth fan, but as a film, the Lord of the Rings theatrical cuts are just amazing. Just amazing. One of the really subtle things that I did coming up here, and just, I cut down on the sequence too. There was just a little too much punching and slashing and hacking, so so for example, in this moment right here, boom, Legolas continues to fight and slash and hack, and I'm like, let's just continue on. We got a nice little punctuation mark with him stabbing the 2 in the throat, which is a pretty BA move, by the way. Let's move on to the next moment. But one of the subtler things that I did in this sequence coming up here with Evangeline Lilly, Tauriel healing Keeley, was change the mixing just a little bit. Bless her. I think Evangeline Lilly is a fantastic actress. It was her first day on set, just learning the Elven lines, and she just feels a little bit awkward in some of her Elven incantation-ing. So I mixed it down. I mixed up the music and mixed down her voice. And it's a subtle thing, and I cut down on some of her repetitiveness of saying the incantation as well. It's a subtle thing, but I think it helps just a little bit in making her feel just a little less awkward. And I can't remember who it was who said they had like a 9-second longer version. I think in the version you have, it's the original edit of the Tauriel moment. So the most recent version of the Tauriel moment is much better in my opinion. Okay, more. Sorry. That mug is huge. Yes, it is huge. I also caught all the struggle that Beaufort had on the bridge with an orc. It just wasn't needed. I wanted to get through this side sequence a little bit quicker. Are you going to make a video essay about the Two Towers and Return of the King similar to the Fellowship of the Ring? AI Vlogs, I really shouldn't I? Because I love those movies. Which of the Lord of the Rings movies do I fancy the most? I fancy the Fellowship of the Ring most. I do. for a lot of the reasons that I fancy An Unexpected Journey the most of all of the Hobbit films. I can tell that it was shot first, I can tell that it was edited first, I can tell that it was visual effects first. It just has the most polish, the most creativity, the most energy behind it, because Peter Jackson was more of a whole human while working on it. There's a lot that I love about Two Towers and Return of the King, and there are elements in them that I like more than some of the elements in Fellowship of the Ring, but as a holistic experience, I like Fellowship most. Yeah, so in this, I cut out one of the incantation cycles that Tauriel had here, and this moment right here, I mixed down her dialogue quite significantly and mixed up the music, and I think it helps. It's subtle, but I think it does help to make it a little less awkward. What you were trying to say earlier, do I think Peter Jackson is happy with his own cuts? I think for the most part he is. I'd be curious to just sit down with him, get a couple of glasses of wine in him, loosen up his tongue, and ask him that question, is there anything that you would have changed? But I think the official word on it is he is pleased with his cuts of the film. Will the color grade edit be your final version, or will you remain an ongoing editing process for the foreseeable future? Robert, it will probably be the last word for a long time. I may go back once the 4K versions come out and I get a 4K transfer. I might go back and adjust a couple of things, but it will probably be the final word for now. Love this moment. See, this is the moment where Thorin and Bilbo start to come back into focus. And if I could have asked for Peter Jackson to shoot any extra bits and pieces for the Desolation of Smaug, it would have been to get just a few more sequences to keep them in focus in the film leading up to this moment. But alas, it's what we got. It's what we got, guys. Was I involved in the making of the Hobbit trilogy? No, not in any official capacity. I was not, no. Unfortunately, that would have been amazing if I was. I was this close, like I talked about on my last live stream, this close to moving down to New Zealand to try and get a job on the film. Doesn't mean I would have gotten it, but I was very close to trying. Speaking of making new adjustments, this is one of the adjustments that I made after releasing an initial cut for public viewing. I added to this whole Smaug dwarves interaction just a little bit, because originally I had him breaking out of the mountain covered in gold, and it just didn't work. And it was distracting for too many viewers. So I came up with this ending, and I am very, very proud of it and very thankful that I did. Where can you watch your cut? You just need to send me an email, and I will send you the cut. The email address to send to is in the description down below. Yeah, and so hopefully, I can't remember who was commenting this. I apologize. Hopefully, the moments where Smaug is chasing the dwarves around isn't too much for you as a viewer now. I don't want him to feel too incapable as a mighty beast. And I think, for me, it's just enough. It's just enough to anger him, to make him frustrated, to want to leave this place and go and burn Lake Town to the ground, but not too much as to make him feel less powerful, less scary. Tim Wood says, hey, definitely looked like a worm coming out of the hole in that scene. I'm not sure what you're commenting on there. A worm coming out of a hole? Like Smaug in the moment coming out from behind the rock? For sure, yeah. Did the CGI, Ori asks, did the CGI in the Hobbit movies disturb me? Disturb? No. Too strong of a word, probably. Did it bother me in some instances? Yeah. And again, that's only because it was the established look of this world was a little less CGI heavy. They use miniatures for a lot of the environments instead of CGI and stuff like that. And it's just because of that established look. So this is the new ending. Very proud of this new ending. I think it works really well. Just hearing Smaug's exit from the mountain instead of seeing it. And it allows this kind of build-up now, this kind of beautiful sort of tempo build-up of like, all these characters reacting. What was that sound? Is that Smaug? Oh dear. And we have this moment of Bilbo coming out and looking concerned. It has a nice, just sort of, again, kind of crescendo in the edit that was just stumbled upon by me. And yeah, I'm really, it's one of the moments I'm more proud of, just because it took some creative thinking. Yes, all the moments between Bilbo and Smaug are my favorite in this film. Jero says that you don't think that Lord of the Rings can be experienced as a single movie, a continuous movie. It's hard. I used to every Christmas watch all 3 extended editions of The Lord of the Rings back to back. And every single time, no matter how much I love the films, and I love them a lot, I would get to Return of the King and just be like, I'm ready for this to be over, Much better, in my opinion, to watch at least a day apart. This is the only closing song in all 6 films that I'm not a huge fan of. I like this section right here that we're listening to, this initial opening section. I don't mind sending you an email right now, Ori. But ultimately, I can kind of tell that blessed Ed Sheeran wrote this and recorded it in a day, which he did. It just feels a little bit underbaked. Yes, Tim, thank you. Yeah, Smaug alluding to the classical Western dragon motif versus the serpent. Yes, totally. Yeah, he is like a worm, for sure. Tim, I appreciate your understanding of mythology and Norse legend. It's great. AI Vlogs says, good job leaving out the awkward fight with Smaug and Thorin. Forgets the gold is a conductor and services. I think it was a wheelbarrow that he was riding on there, but it was made of wood, so it's fine. It's fine. No, yeah, that last sequence for me just kind of had to go. Does this film miss a climax because of it? Absolutely. I think it was Khan on here was saying that he, in his edit of The Hobbit, put the attack on Lake Town at the end of this film. And the only reason that I didn't do that was because, like I said, I do tend to like to watch these films, the second 2, that is, back to back. And so for me, it's like, well, it's either going to be at the beginning of the next film, and it is a pretty gangbusters beginning, let's get real, or the ending of this one. And so I just left at the beginning of the next one, because it is a great opening, and I watch them back to back anyways, usually. Thank you, Martin, Luke Martin, for complimenting on how I edited around the Golden Smaug. Took some thinking. Yes! Just B. Glad that you're hyped about seeing the extended versions and the color grade. The new color grade. Me too. I'm excited for you guys to see them. Again, these are all... I would always encourage you to make sure that you own these films or rent them on places like iTunes, supporting the original creators. Sorry, there's a car alarm going on outside. It's distracting me because I am not the owner of these films at all. So please do that. Support them. But for those either interested in seeing the extended editions that I've put together sooner rather than later, if you want to even donate $1 over on Patreon, I'm giving a sneak early look to my patrons over on patreon.com. So no pressure at all. They will be coming out for everyone else here in the next few months. But if you're chomping at the bit to see them sooner rather than later, that is one way to do it. Lady Vengeance, thank you so much for joining once again. It's been wonderful sharing some of my insight. Gandalf is triggered. I'm sorry that I left you out, my friend. You just hang on, Gandalf. Just hang on. You will be in the extended edition significantly. AI Vlogs, 2 done, 1 to go. Enjoying this so much. Thank you once again, AI Vlogs. Your support has been very meaningful. Alternate Movies says, in Norway we have a movie marathon and a huge cinema. In Oslo? I didn't know that you were from Norway, Alternate Movies. That's fantastic. It goes on for a whole night, and it goes, and I get so tired in 2 towers. Definitely prefer watching them one at a time. Yeah, me too. But it is so much fun to watch them with a group, is it not? Come on. It's one of the reasons why this is so great. Jero says, the Battle of Five Armies is so disappointing for me, because it is so heavy usage of CGI in comparison to the battles in Lord of the Rings. There is a lot of CGI in the Battle of the Five Armies, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a significant amount when we get to that live stream next week. But But ultimately, two thoughts about that. One, it's significantly cut down in my edit, so hopefully that helps a little bit. Two, though, there are certain instances where the use of CGI is pretty beautiful. So I love the look of Ravenhill, all the swirling fog. We'll talk about this when we get to Battle of the Five Armies. But elements like that could only be achieved really in the way that it is, in the painterly way that it is in the computer. And also, I think, too, it is a bummer that it feels so CGI heavy because there are some pretty massive, incredible sets that they did shoot on for the Battle of the Five Armies. It's the fact that it's also color graded the way that it is and has some of the set extensions that it does that you lose sight of those massive sets, and that's a bummer because it's not as CGI stuffed, I think, as some people think it is. Marathons would be too intense for Florian. I even split up the single films because of the emotional impact. Yeah, splitting them up is not a bad idea. Jero, it's been fantastic having you here. I look forward to having you and so many people also here for the watch party next week. Yes, I think this is too Ed Sheeran-y for Middle-earth. I agree. Oh, guys, this has been great. Thank you so much for tuning in like you have. I mean, it means a lot to me. And I think, John, thank you. Again, like I mentioned at the top, this is not the time or place to be political or to make grand social statements. But I will just say I'm so thankful for communities that are bound together in love and like-mindedness, regardless of who we are and where we're from. I love that. And I think it's great that we can have this and be reminded of the beauty of unity that art can bring about. So thankful for that and so thankful for you guys. Florian says, thank you, Chris, for hosting it. It was a refreshing and fun time. Glad to hear that. It was very refreshing and fun for me as well. Yeah, I feel great. It's midnight in Dubai. If you guys are in Dubai right now and watching, and it's midnight, cheers. Hopefully you're enjoying your coffee like I am. Of course. I mean, reading your guys' questions and answering them is the best part. Ed Sheeran is in the fantasy movie Albatross? I didn't know that. Ed Sheeran is also in Game of Thrones, which is super random. He's clearly a huge, fantasy nerd, which I can appreciate. Man, Jero, that means a lot. If I'm inspiring any filmmakers out there, that means the world. I mean, Peter Jackson inspired me. So the fact that I would, in any way, shape, or form, even in the smallest of ways, inspire someone else is very meaningful. So yeah, if you guys are interested in checking out any of the films that I've actually made, written and directed, there are some on my film. You just scroll down to the portion that says short films, and you can watch the short films. I've actually just finished a film that is being entered into film festivals, and it's not released to anyone yet. But if anyone's really passionate about films and would be interested in watching my short film, by all means, shoot me an email. Same email address as the one for requesting these cuts, and I would be happy to share you a private link of my short film as well. Where am I from, Chris? I was raised in Washington State, here in the States. I lived in California for about a decade, and right now I live in Houston, Texas. I teach at a university, teaching the film department here in Houston, Texas. Yes, the Starlight theme. It's beautiful, beautiful. Ed Sheeran ruined Game of Thrones too. Yeah. Bless him. I mean, look, again, being a huge nerd, I'm not going to fault him for being a nerd and wanting to be in these things, but he does have kind of the wrong vibe for them, it's true. Yes, I'm really excited to share Battle of the Five Armies with you guys, and if you have not seen my cut yet, I can't wait for you to see it, because for me, it was the one that I changed the most significantly, and I think, for me, the improvement on it is most significant. Opinion on Game of Thrones. Do you watch student film? Would love to connect and hear your opinion. Do I watch student films? If you have a student film that you want me to watch, send it to me, man. I would love to watch it and give my thoughts and opinions. Absolutely. I have lots of thoughts and opinions on Game of Thrones. I'm going to tell you right now, this is weird. I've watched everything but the final season of Game of Thrones. It had its ups and downs, Game of Thrones. Its ups were incredibly amazing. Its downs were a bummer. But that's a big conversation. Is this a jar of good old pipe weave? No, this is actually a candle. My wife got this for me for my birthday. It is Shire Sweetgrass, apparently. It smells like the Shire. It's very good. As a teacher, you'd surely be inspiring the next generation. Thank you, Paul. I hope so. I hope so. Yes, Moose. It's kind of like what we were saying. Yeah, our problem with the Ed Sheeran song is it sounds like an Ed Sheeran song, not necessarily a Lord of the Rings one. This is something I'm doing just for a friend of mine, but I'm actually, because he really doesn't like the Ed Sheeran song at all, I'm actually replacing the Ed Sheeran song with a different song in the end credits. I don't dislike it that much. But yeah, he was like, as a special request, because he's burning his own Blu-rays of my cuts. He's like, as a special request, can I replace, or can I replace for him the Ed Sheeran song? And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. What kind of teacher? I teach film. So directing, screenwriting, cinematography. So I teach both practical and theory. I think the two of them are very important to go hand in hand. You need to know what to do, but you also need to know why you should do it. You're going to become a teacher, Max. That's awesome. It's a high calling. And I wish you all the luck in the world. All right, guys. I can't just continue to go on forever. What's the new song? Gosh, it's this a cappella group. Again, I feel so bad. I want to give them a shout out. It's this a cappella group that I found on YouTube, and they do these awesome covers of actual. They take like song passages from Tolkien's texts, and set music to them. And there's this really awesome one. It's called Durin's Son. I should just look it up real quick and send it to you guys in the chat because it's awesome. Durin's song. Hopefully this just gets it right here and right now. Yes, Song of Durin, complete edition. I'll just put it in the chat right now. It's very cool. So this is just from my friend. So yeah, give that a listen, guys. It's a pretty cool song. It's not perfect, but I do think it sounds more Lord of the Ringsy than Ed Sheeran. Yes. So anyways, I shouldn't stay on forever, guys. I should let you guys go. But this is great. If there are any, yeah, you'll get at least 10 minutes of screen time next time, Gandalf. Don't you worry. If you guys have any questions at all, just about filmmaking or about this process that I didn't answer here, or if I didn't read your question, I apologize. By all means, drop a comment in the comments down below. And actually, that's really helpful just for the view count. So if you can do that, that would be amazing. And obviously, if you don't have the cuts, shoot me an email. And if you just want to talk filmmaking, then yeah, shoot me a comment down below or shoot me a tweet. Be well, guys. Thank you for sharing the love and being unified in this thing. It's been just fantastic getting to hang out with you. And until we meet again, which will be sometime